This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Hope you had a great weekend, and I hope all you dads out there had great Father's Day yesterday. What a weekend it was. U.S. Open. I still cannot believe Rory McIlroy gagged on those two putts. What a show it was yesterday at Pinehurst number 2. We'll touch on that a little bit later on with Reid Fowler of PGA Tour Live. But we got lots to talk about on the local Winnipeg sports scene today. The Winnipeg Jets have just in the last half hour announced their new assistant coaches. We will get to that. The Bombers are back at practice as they look to get off the schneid Friday night at home against the British Columbia Lions. We've got an update on who is there and who isn't there. Big-time injury issues for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers right now after this tough start. And the Seabears situation is wild. Teddy Allen is no longer a member of the Seabears, and they just finished a press conference in the last hour explaining how a guy that just went for 39 points and was the MVP of the league needed to go. And you can imagine there was lots brewing behind the scenes because I think on the surface that seemed like a crazy thing to happen. But it is a team sport, and we'll get to all of that coming up very soon. And of course, the Jets have new assistant coaches. So we're going to talk Jets. We're going to talk Bombers. Joey Slattery coming on later on in the show to fill us in on what the heck's going on with the Seabears. Oh, and the Edmonton Oilers are still alive. And we've got Game 5 of the Cup Finals tomorrow to see whether they can get this thing back to Edmonton and really make it a series. Sean Reynolds is going to join us from Fort Lauderdale. Coming up first up, we'll have Jeff Hamilton. We'll get the latest on the Bombers and the Canadian Football League. Don't forget, if you missed it last week, new show Wednesdays on the Winnipeg Sports Talk channel, CFL 110, with myself and Hammer taking you around the Canadian Football League. And, you know, only 2 weeks in, some very, very interesting stories, including the one right here, which might be the most surprising of all, that the Bombers are 0-2. So buckle up, folks. Great to have you with us. It is a packed Monday show. Lots to get to. We're going to bring Michael Remis in right now. Just before we do that, a big thanks to all the sponsors that make Winnipeg Sports Talk happen each and every day. A special thanks to Pat Kanuga and the folks at Garage Living Winnipeg for coming on board. They are presenting CFL 110 with myself and Jeff Hamilton, which I just laid out for you on Wednesdays. We also want to thank Rolly's Transfer, Coolbet Canada, Princess Auto, Consolidated Supply and Manitoba Battery, Little Brown Jug, Canadian Club, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, Breezy Bend, Assiniboia Downs, back at the track tonight at 7:30. The Winnipeg Gold Eyes, who are hot right now. Looking forward to seeing everybody at the game tomorrow. And, of course, Hoagie Boys and the gang over at Next Door. And the beer can, we will get to a why not question of the day for not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray. Michael Remis, we've got a lot on our plate today.
Yeah, Mondays are always fun, but we did have a couple, local news things. I was told we're going to do mostly U.S. Open, big with Rory, blowing it at the end there.
Oh, my God.
CFL Week 2, crazy game last night with Saskatchewan and Hamilton. Really getting into this Sunday night CFL. They started last season. The BC Lions had their home opener as well with 50 Cent, over 50,000 people. And Stanley Cup final as well. But, yeah, 2 stories with the Jets announcing their assistant coaches and the Seabears announcing the release of last year's MVP, Teddy Allen. Shock. It hasn't gone well for the Sea Bears the last couple games. They lost a sold-out game yesterday at Canada Life Center. So I guess if you were paying close attention, maybe not as much of a surprise, according to Mike Taylor and his press conference. But you see, last year's MVP, just straight up released. Interesting stuff there. And I see a lot of people chat. We do have Gold Eyes night for us tomorrow night too, so we're getting fired up for that. Yeah,
definitely. Now, I was doing the lock shop while this press conference was going on. We were just talking beforehand. It seemed like it was pretty clear that this had been going on for a while and they needed to make a decision. And that decision was to move on without the guy that was the MVP of the entire league last year.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just editing this clip from Mike Taylor, the press conference, but just from listening to that and seeing how the release was worded, I think there's a combination of on-court and off-court issues. On-court not playing within the system, and Mike Taylor did mention that he was fined by the league and by the team, and there's just a lot of stuff going on that they couldn't put up with. They tried to get him on the right track in terms of playing within the team structure, and whatever off-court stuff they didn't they said was going on. They didn't give any details. It's amazing because these are the last two tweets from the Sea Bears account us coming off a sold-out game on Father's Day yesterday. Teddy doing Teddy things, player of the game, and 39 points. And then today's tweet, the next one, less than 24 hours later, the Winnipeg Sea Bears announced today the team has released Teddy Allen from the organization. Just a complete 180. It's crazy. And the decision to release Teddy Allen was very difficult. However, it was made with the best interest of the organization in mind. We remain committed to maintaining a cohesive and forward-thinking team environment that aligns with our core values and objectives. Our organization dedicates itself to upholding high standards of team integrity, respect, and consideration for our community, said team president Jason Smith.
I'll say this: Teddy's had some weird ass IG lives. If you've ever popped into any of those, I don't think that was the reason why he's gone. But I remember last year at one point in one of the games, it looked like he was on the verge of killing one of his teammates on the court, and you realize that this individual is incredibly talented, but also somewhat volatile. And I think that volatility finally reared itself in a way that they couldn't move on, continuing with him as a leader. And maybe the signing of Foreman last week, who was second to Teddy in MVP voting, was last year's leading scorer, might have been. Do you have this clip from the presser? We can get to that, and then we can move on to this Jets news.
Joey will give more later, but here's the opening, and this was I don't know. They buried Teddy Allen, I thought. But you know what? They made it clear. They gave him all the chances. They tried to work with him to sort out whatever issues he had. But in the end, they made the decision to release him. Here's head coach Mike Taylor.
Well, obviously, it's a difficult decision. It's a strong decision. But we felt like our season was right on track at 3-1 after the Brampton game. There was the incident in Niagara, and for the last 10 days, we've had several circumstances arise. We don't want to get into those details. He's been fined by the league. He's been fined by our team internally. And I can assure you, personally, I have spent so much time trying to help Teddy. Our organization has done everything we possibly can to try to help him. Teammates, the whole organization has done everything on multiple levels to try to get him back within the team, within the structure, within the system. Unfortunately, here we are today. The organization stands for teamwork, stands for hard work, stands for the blue collar work ethic of Winnipeg. And unfortunately, I think Teddy at times recently has been outside of that, and all the efforts that we've had to try to bring him back in reached a point. So here we are. and we are prioritizing our team, our organization, as we move forward. Unfortunately, we had to make that release this morning with Teddy.
All right, pretty clear. A lot of things happening behind the scenes with the Sea Bears and Teddy Allen. I see Scott Westman in chat. Was Teddy's tracksuit thrown in the shower by chance? There is a bit of tracksuit to this, it does seem. Anyways, Joey Slattery is going to join us a little bit later on the program. But the big news coming out in the last half hour, Remo, is the Winnipeg Jets have filled out their coaching staff, announcing today they have appointed Dean Chenoweth and Davis Payne as assistant coaches under head coach Scott Arniel. Quotes from Arniel: after a thorough interview process, I feel we found two great individuals to help push our team forward. Both Dean and Davis bring with them a great deal of enthusiasm, as well as a tremendous amount of team success and experience on the development side of coaching. Having worked with the veterans and young players alike, both excelled in the area of special teams with top 10 power plays and penalty killing units. Excited by what both can offer our staff and players. So Dean Chenoweth has been with the Leafs for the past 3 seasons. He had also worked as an assistant for the Canes between 2018 to 2021 and the Islanders from 09 to 12. He was, if you recall, a first-round pick in the draft by the Islanders in 87 and did play 10 seasons as a pro, 241 games for the Islanders and Bruins in the NHL. Davis Payne was an assistant coach in Ottawa for the past 5 seasons under DJ Smith. He also worked for the Sabres as their associate coach from 17 to 19. And before that, the LA Kings. They won a couple cups between 2012 and 2017, as well as with the St. Louis Blues. Yes, he was with the Kings Stanley Cup winning team in 2013-2014. So Chenoweth and Payne will join Wade Flaherty and Marty Johnson, who both returned to the Jets coaching staff. So now Scott Arniel has his guys, and it's all systems go to the NHL draft. And of course, WST at the NHL draft, brought to you by Coolbet, begins. Whoa, man, that's next week. Yeah, we're leaving a week tomorrow night, Remis. So good to get this one off, and I'm sure over the course of the next few days we'll find out a little bit more and hear more from Chenoweth and Payne, who joined Scott Arniel as the new-look coaching staff of the Winnipeg Jets going into the 24-25 season.
Yeah, counting down to the draft very, very soon, Huss, and we were wondering when was this going to happen. You know, there's speculation, were they waiting for Todd Nelson with the Hershey Bears? But no, they're grabbing a pair of 2 experienced individuals, Dean Chenoweth and Davis Payne. Chenoweth, he's the penalty kill guy. Murat notes that he was with the Leafs, ranked 12th from when he was hired from 21-22 to 23-24. And you mentioned Davis Payne was with Ottawa on DJ Smith's staff, and he was part of the Kings, the 2014 Cup win. He's got some head coaching experience as well. I remember him with the St. Louis Blues, and we'd speculated, Arniel said his phone was blowing up his pocket there with all the vibrating from the people reaching out, wanted to be involved. That's what you say now. You don't say ringing off the hook, Huss, because there's no hook anymore. But they went with guys with experience, and we'll see if they can turn around the team's special teams. Chenoweth was with Carolina. His penalty kill was 8th, 4th, and 3rd. Scott Billick notes on his X account. So there we go. Another thing checked off Kevin Cheveldayoff's to-do list, Scott Arniel's to-do list. Assistant coaches, here they are.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, I think you can go through, anyone that's been in the league for as long as these guys have been in different spots, and you'll see there's some real highs and some lows. The Leafs PK was not good last year. That one sort of stands out. But then you look at other spots when, maybe they had a little bit more buy-in or personnel and had better results. So I think, importantly for Winnipeg, they absolutely know what they need to do. better. And I think probably part of that also comes to personnel. I mean, we've seen what Kevin Stenlund's done this year in Florida, both with maybe a chance to show what he can do a little bit more offensively, but certainly as a part of that PK unit. And, I think you could maybe argue that a few of the guys that they lost last year that we didn't spend enough time talking about, like a Stenny or a Saku Menelainen, their losses really hurt the Jets when it came to PK. There has to be some reason. I don't really think that they went with a completely different style, dropping from top 10 in the league to the bottom 10 in the league. But certainly that happens. But listen, this is going to be on Scott Arniel. I think that, the influence of the head coach in special teams is important. And certainly when it comes to power play. And I recall that comment, we were playing that show from After the Whistle in Buffalo a couple of weeks ago. Thomas Vanek saying that Scott Arniel was the best power play coach that he'd ever had. So at times coaches will just say, all right, this is your responsibility, go do it. Other times they'll be a little bit more involved. And I think because of, Arnie moving from the assistant coach to the head chair, bringing in new guys, him having a much better knowledge of the personnel here than any assistant coaches, I would imagine we'll probably have more of a role, at least early on in the season, in getting this established. But the wait is over. I guess we don't need to get a logo for Assistant Coach Watch 24 because they got both of them done, presumably over the weekend, Remis, and now the Jets move forward under Scott Arniel with Chenoweth and Payne as part of the group.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. They're focusing on special teams, and with the hires, we mentioned penalty kill down last year. It was pretty good. I mean, we kind of joked, they just lost Kevin Stenlund. Obviously, he had a huge impact on their penalty kill, and we're seeing what he's done with Florida all year, shutting down the Oilers' power play until the last game. And, the power play certainly had some issues. I think a lot of it was, they couldn't figure out how to work, how it was going to work without Velarde, and with him and Monahan, it seemed to all really click together. But will Sean Monahan be back? That's one of the questions we're looking at, as well as the defense. You mentioned the draft. The Jets do not have a first-round pick. Nikolai Ehlers, again, a topic that I'm sure will come up throughout the week leading into the draft as well. So there's still another things brewing. But yes, we can pour one out for the Winnipeg Jets assistant coach watch, which wasn't, I don't know if it was as suspenseful as the Jets head coach watch this year, and nothing will ever touch Dubois drama and Trotz
2 years of Dubois
watch
drama. Yeah, Trotz watch, Dubois drama. I mean, Issue Boy Bruce says on to Ehlers watch. I don't think we can go full Ehlers watch, although we will be watching Ehlers and anything that happens to it. But I mean, as we've heard from most people around it, this isn't necessarily a real front burner issue for the Winnipeg Jets, but that can change very quickly. And that's part of why it will be so interesting to be down in Vegas and be connected with so many of the folks in and around the industry, not only for what is happening and percolating with the Winnipeg Jets, but, everything else around the National Hockey League. We'll get to that. We'll get to the Cup final coming up with Rennie in a few minutes, but quickly, Remis, let's touch on the Bombers. And again, we'll do the full round the Canadian Football League in CFL 110 when Hammer joins us on Wednesday. We'll touch on that a little bit today, but focusing strictly on the Bombers. Bombers out and about. Saw Brady Oliveira and Nick Dembski, part of the city's 150th celebrations on the weekend. But it's back to practice, and while Brady Oliveira was representing the Bombers in a promotional capacity on the weekend, he is not in practice today. And I can't say that's surprising considering he didn't play on the weekend. I think we'll get Thursday, I should say. We'll get a better idea of whether there's a possibility he plays probably over the next couple. But the other guy not in practice, and this is of great concern if this is longer than just today, is Dalton Schoen, because without Kenny Lawler, Zach Caleros had limited targets. I mean, I shouldn't say limited opportunities outside of, their big guys. Nick Dembski had a big play. Wheatfall had a couple big plays. He certainly was trying to get it to his number one guy, Dalton Schoen, a few times, and wasn't quite that connection between Zach and Dalton that we've seen before. So if there's any issue with that, listen, great opportunity for these young players. The other news, I guess, is the Bombers added Chris Smith, added defensive lineman Ali Fayyad. The line is decimated. We'll see who's ready to go or able to maybe get back into the lineup on Friday. But the Bomber return game has been non-existent. We knew that was going to be a big issue as we got closer to the real games throughout the preseason. And then Janarian and Grant signed with Toronto. And it was like, okay, well, who do we got? Well, not much so far. Payne had that 109-yard return in the exhibition game, then got hurt, then got cut. But he's back, and I would imagine that we'll look forward to seeing Chris Smith maybe do the same thing he did in the preseason, hopefully. In a game they're going to need everything to beat the British Columbia Lions on Friday at home.
Yeah, and they're also missing Dietrich Nichols, who was there but in street clothes. So I don't know which injury would hurt worse if Schoen was out. Oliveira continues to be out. The return game, maybe you get some reinforcements there with Chris Smith. I see Derek Taylor adding Kyrie Wilson not practicing. A lot of injuries here there, and I think this is some adversity that the Bombers haven't really had. I mean, their O-line has basically been the same the last couple of years. You saw, the last game against Ottawa, Huss, that they had some trouble protecting Zach. He's under pressure a lot, got sacked a couple times, just doesn't have the time that he's used to. So it's going to be a tough game against BC. They're fired up. They got their first win on Saturday over Calgary. And I'm having real trouble, Huss. We put together a power rankings, UI and Connor, each week. Like, where do I put the Bombers on the power rankings? I mean, based on how I think power rankings are some of, like, this early in the year, it's, you take the expectations and what you think coming into the year. But what we've seen from the Bombers, they haven't even thrown a touchdown pass. They don't have a win. It's tough, but it's still early. I mean, you're 0-2. You don't want to overreact too hard, but I haven't even seen what the line is. Like, are they going to be, when's the last time they were a home underdog?
Well, okay, it's funny you say that. We just went through this on the Lock Shop, and we were guessing the lines, and I thought the line would be a pick'em with Winnipeg at home to BC. The Bombers have actually opened as 1.5-point favorites at Coolbet for the games. And I said, if you're betting BC, now's the time to do it. Mm-hmm. Because I think this will get closer to a pick'em as we get closer to the game. Like, I think a lot of the fact that the Bombers are favorites is based on reputation. I mean, it's certainly not on what they've done so far in 2 games. And when you dig in a little deeper and look at the injuries that the team has had compounded on top of the players that they lost in the offseason, I mean, again, it's very early. There's a ton of football left to be played. But this is it seemingly a situation I don't think many of us thought that the Bombers would be in right now. I'll just put it that way. They've got a lot of work to do, and they definitely need to get some guys back in the lineup that aren't there right now. So Hammer's going to jump on later on, and we'll get to all of that. Coming up next, we're going to have Sean Reynolds, and Remo, the Oilers sure got back in the win column in style on Saturday. They've been saving all those goals up, and like I tweeted, Bob was due to get lit up, and he got lit up in spectacular fashion. He got pulled after 5 goals. The Oilers win 8-1. And Dusty asked me this today when we were chatting. Is like, does the way they win mean something to Edmonton? I think it does. I don't think it means anything to Florida. Whatever, they lost a game. They'll be there ready to win a championship in front of their home fans. For Edmonton, though, considering how down they were, backs against the wall, down 3-0, to win a game in that fashion, I think it does give them some extra juice and a little bit of extra confidence going into a very difficult place to play, knowing that if they don't win, it's tea time.
I think you look at the games that they played, the Oilers were right there, but they ran into Sergei Bobrovsky, who had this ridiculous save percentage. They had a lot of chances over and over again, but he kept robbing them. They couldn't finish. And you look at their power play, 0 for 12 coming into game 4. Draisaitl, Hyman, and Nugent Hopkins didn't have a point until game 4. McDavid hadn't scored until game 4. So if you're a stats guy, you believe in regression, like eventually the dam is going to break, and all these opportunities that they've had and unable to convert, they were eventually going to. It happened all in one game, 8-1. And they had gotten contributions, from, like Warren Fogle scored, and, Holloway was making contributions. It was their top guys. And the power play, which has been, propelled them all season to the Cup final, they hadn't really shown up yet in the series in terms of getting on the score sheet. And there they were in game 4, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, you get another win? Just win one game, you're only down 3-2, and you're going back home, and this crazy crowd at, not Rexall Place, at, what is it, Rogers, whatever it's called, Rogers, I don't even remember. But, yeah, I think Oilers, you got to feel good. You got to feel like they're right back in at us when going in. Well, it's done. We're going to see Paul Maurice lift the Stanley Cup, and I think if anyone can come back down 3-0, it's Connor McDavid, who now set the mark for most assists in a postseason, which is insane. 32, beating Gretzky's record of 31, set in 87-88, historic season. And now I'm thinking, like, hey, even if, and I'm going all over the place here, but I know Florida lose, like, could McDavid get the Conn Smythe? And I think maybe more people are talking about it now.
Yeah, no, I think absolutely he could. I mean, the fact that he got the record, the fact that they had this performance, Bob getting blown up. And listen, I mean, I think it was always going to be Barkov or Bob on Florida if they won. But when you consider the entire playoffs, which is what the Conn Smythe is for, McDavid is certainly going to get, I would say, more consideration than a player on a losing team normally does. That's assuming that they lose. And, I mean, I'm not saying that they're going to, but the last game is the hardest one to win. Florida still hasn't, I mean, they got here last year and fell short. Paul Maurice has been there before and has fallen short. They probably win it tomorrow night, but I'll tell you what, it's going to be fun if they don't get it done tomorrow night. We've got a game 6 in Edmonton on Friday with the potential 7th game the following Monday. All of that coming up. We'll get to the Cup final with Rennie, who's going to join us. Shortly. I mentioned right off the top that CFL 110 debuted last week. If you are a CFL fan and want a full trip around the league each and every week, make sure to join us here on the Winnipeg Sports Talk channel for additional content outside of your daily Winnipeg Sports Talk fix. And our friends at CFL 110, proudly supported by a great friend of ours, Pat Kanuga, and the people at Garage Living Winnipeg. Garage Living Winnipeg specialize in revolutionizing your garage and changing it from a place that probably has a lot of clutter around and maybe barely any room for your car to a place that you can both work, play, and enjoy, that will absolutely revolutionize the living space and your home in general, not to mention adding to the value of your home. They specialize in gorgeous polyaspartic floor coatings, premium metal cabinetry, slat wall, storage racks to organize absolutely everything in your garage. We've seen guys put lifts in to be working on cars. Beautiful, clean, functional garages that not only look amazing but add value to your home. And of course, our pal Pat Kanuga is the consultant there. He was a big J for a long time with CBC, and now he's helping Winnipeggers and fellow car guys like him change everything about their garage into a spot that not only they're working, but maybe hanging out, watching the game in there with the fellas down the block. Give Pat a call for more information on what they can do for you. 204-999-1234. He'll come by for a free in-garage consultation. Again, 999-1234. Go online to Garage Living Winnipeg. Garage is made for living. Hey, if you are making a move this summer, make sure to check in with our friends at Rolly's Transfer to take as much stress out of the always stressful moving procedure. Listen, they are family owned and operated for over 60 years, the most trusted name in moving services. And with their extended logistics business, they are all over Winnipeg and southern Manitoba pretty much on a daily basis, which means flexible routes, timing, and bottom line, great pricing when it comes to your quote. And speaking of that quote, go to the new relaunched Rollies website at rollies.com. Top right corner, request a quote feature. Just click on that. Let them know where you're moving, what you're moving, when you need it moved, and they'll turn it around with a very quick, affordable quote for you to get you moving. Next time you're on the move, use Manitoba's most trusted name in moving services for over 60 years, Rollies Transfer. Find out more and request your quote today at rollies.com. It was another busy weekend for our friends at Consolidated Supply because with all the rain that we've had, a lot of people realizing they've got irrigation needs. And that's where it starts with Consolidated Supply, but there really is just the start with irrigation solutions for both residential homes and commercial spots. But they also have artificial turf. They have golf carts as the exclusive club car dealer in Manitoba, and other great options for your property, like the full line of Crest power tools and the RTK satellite-guided robot mower, hot tubs, outdoor kitchens, and they're the leaders in small engine parts and repair. Pop by and see them at their showroom, open to the public, 1395 Niagara Road East. You can find out more online at cte.ca. And hey, for all that stuff that you're using this summer, whether it be power tools or a boat or a camper, you got to have batteries for those. And if you have battery needs, there's nowhere else to go other than Manitoba Battery, your local option for the best selection and service and price in town. Manitoba Battery's beating the pants off the big box stores for price. They now have 2 locations in Winnipeg, including Logan Avenue and their new one on Dover Court in the south end of the city. And right now, a limited supply of super power sport batteries. The super sale is on right now for all of you guys with power sport needs. And hey, you can order online at manitobabattery.com and they'll deliver it to you for free anywhere in the city of Winnipeg with any purchase over $60. It's just that easy. So for all your battery needs, make it Manitoba Battery. Give them a call or order online at manitobabattery.com. All right, we've got lots to get to. Big news on the Jets, and of course the Cup final continues. Let's head down to South Florida and check in with Rennie on the road. Our guy, Sean Reynolds of Sportsnet and K&R fame, doing that long haul from Edmonton to South Florida. What's up, pal? How are you?
Nothing. Another Rennie on the road. I like that. You just came up with the title of my next podcast, Huss.
There you go. There you go. Fire it up. I'm good for that, dude. How's it been just before we get to the hockey? Like we had Pagnotta on Friday, I guess. It was just talking about how crazy it was for a lot of people to get from South Florida to Edmonton. Thank God for the extra day in between these games when there's travel, huh?
Yeah, it's funny because last night, texted some people back at home and I was like, okay, I'm ready to tap out, right? Like left early morning in Edmonton, landed at about midnight, get to the hotel, you're scrambling, looking for something to eat. Those built-in days, I know they're built in every time there's a changeover in this series, it's 2 days off. I understand the ideas to make sure that there's no travel related advantages that one team gets over the other. And you saw that almost happened with the Florida Panthers on their way up to Edmonton as they had trouble getting out of here. But that extra day, it sure helps kind of get your mind back into the series here. It's a bit of a grind. I've been on the road since around the 20th of May, because I covered off that third round series between Dallas and Edmonton. But yeah, hey, there's no place I'd rather be. You get paid to watch hockey, Huss. This is a dream job.
Yeah, we're not feeling too sorry for you right now being in the building for these games.
Don't cry for Rennie.
And listen, before we get into the series, just in the last hour, I'm sure you caught this, we finally got a little clarity on what's up with the Winnipeg Jets. It was kind of weird, like when Scott Arniel was introduced, they had already been speaking with assistant coaching possibilities. It did seem like we would probably find out sooner as opposed to later. It did take a little while, but now we know. Dean Schnoeth and Davis Payne rounding out Scott Arniel's staff?
Yeah, Payne's an interesting one. A head coach with the St. Louis Blues back from 2009 to the end of the season of 2012. I mean, you're looking at a guy who's probably following a very similar path that Scott Arniel followed, right? A head coach back in those days, had his opportunity, has been kind of, I don't want to say in the shadows, but for me, for the most part, unless you're covering these teams and you're chatting with these assistant coaches, the vast majority of them do seem to kind of live in the shadows. And when they make their way back into the sun the way that Scott Arniel has, it's interesting to see him going with a guy who seems to be following a very similar path to his. And yeah, I mean, clearly one of the things that he'd identified, Scott Arniel, was needing to have better special teams, better power play. So these are crucial hires for the Jets going forward. One of those things that, there's so much that happens off the ice in trying to make a team a better team. It was said a number of times, and boy, oh boy, it sure looks like it. Imagine what the Winnipeg Jets would have been this season if they had had high functioning special teams. It would have been something to witness. And I think there's potential with the player movement and some of the things that are happening in the offseason for the Jets to take a step back. So fixing some of those areas by hiring the right guys is a way to take a step forward.
Well, you know what? I still, when we talk about the Jets PK last year, like why did it regress the way that it did? Because, I mean, under the same guy, Scott Arniel, the year before, they were 7th in the National Hockey League. And listen, you're getting a first-hand look at our old pal Stanley and what he's doing with that Florida unit right now. I know Sacramento Lineman left. I do wonder how much of it was personnel, how much of it was any sort of a change in attack. I don't really think that was the case at all, or simply just execution. But there's a lot that goes into the body of work over 82 games, both from a personnel, from a strategies. And like, as you can say, you can look at guys that are as experienced as the coaches coming in, they'll have units that were 4th, 6th, 8th in the league, and they'll also have years that, well, frankly, were sort of like what the Jets were last year. Bones was on with us, not last week, but the week before, Rennie. Yeah. And he said, to be frank, if we had average special teams last year, we probably win the President's Trophy.
Right.
And to be honest, I mean, you look at the numbers and where everything's finished, you can absolutely say that special teams cost the Jets a few points in the standings. So to get back to where they were, to maximize their abilities when it comes to 5-on-4 and 4-on-5, very clearly one of the top priorities of this coaching staff moving forward. And I would think that Scott Arniel will be heavily involved in both early on in the season with his knowledge of the personnel as opposed to the guys coming in with a blank slate with the team.
Yeah, I mean, I would think so. I think he's clearly, and part of that is, him being involved in that and knowing what's happening is his expectation that the guys that he's bringing in are going to know how to handle the guys that are coming in here. I mean, managing personalities, I always think, is a really big thing. We take a look at, I think a great example is if you take a look at Nathan MacKinnon, who we all saw what he can do in the playoffs with the Colorado Avalanche in the first round there. Everyone needs to look back and remember that time, and I think it's happened a couple times there, but there was a blow-up between him and his head coach on the bench a number of years ago that I think a lot of people at the time were saying, like, this was the end of Jared Bednar. This was the end of his job, right? He needed to figure out a way to fit with that team and to marry his coaching style to getting the results from his players. And he was able to find a way to do that clearly, because you can see the way that he clicked with the Colorado Avalanche and all their players, and a guy like Nathan MacKinnon over the years when they won the cup, even what they showed in the playoffs this year, you got the very best out of Nathan MacKinnon. I think that is probably, if you're looking for places for growth, that is an area of growth that there's potential for the Winnipeg Jets? Because I mean, I take a look at the Jets, and I'll say this: as I've gone on and continued to cover the playoffs since the Jets got knocked out, there were so many people, and I see a lot of them in your chat here right now who are in our chat on Kenny and Rennie, and so many of them were like, well, watch the Colorado Avalanche waltz to the Stanley Cup final. No one's stopping that team. And well, that team lost to the team that lost to the Edmonton Oilers, and now there's a good chance the Edmonton Oilers are going to lose to the Florida Panthers. This isn't one of those years where the Jets can turn around and say, hey, we lost to the eventual Cup winner. Had we beat them, who knows what would have happened. The Jets got knocked pretty far down the list here in this playoffs. And I think one of the things that I've noticed series after series after series, you're seeing it from Florida right now with the likes of Alexander Barkov, with Bobrovsky. You're clearly seeing it from Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl on that team. You saw it from the Stars on the Dallas Stars. You saw it from the Stars on the Colorado Avalanche. Their stars really stepped up in a big way in all of those series. I do think that the Winnipeg Jets, if I look back on what happened with them there, they weren't able to do that. Connor Hellebuck wasn't able to do that. Mark Scheifele showed well, but he wasn't able to elevate the way that stars on other teams were able to elevate. So I think a lot of what's going forward with the Winnipeg Jets here is the coaching staff trying to find a way to get the very best out of those players at the right time of the year. Because that, to me, Winnipeg Jets tackled a lot over the last couple of years, but finding a way to get those big players to take that next step and be their best at the right time is clearly the missing ingredient from this team.
Yeah, and listen, I'd make the argument that the Jets, never mind not taking that step up in the playoffs, took a step back. And I think we heard that from a number of players. Like, that just wasn't close to the best of the Jets that we've seen this year. But that's what's made it for a long off season in and around here. Hey, before we just talk about the actual Cup final and coming up into Game 5, we're looking forward to seeing you and everybody kind of from that hockey world getting together in Vegas next week. But you're there traveling. There's a ton of national media around. I'm sure you're talking a lot with them. What are your conversations about the Jets like with some of the other national media? And any other stories? I'm sure the name Nikolai Ehlers has come up quite a bit. I mean, what have people been leaning on you for, Shauna? What have you been hearing from others talking about our team here in the Peg?
Well, the Jets are clearly an enigma to the national media, as they are to a degree to us. Again, I've talked about this in the past, and this is what I kind of open with when people ask me about them. I've got a pretty good track record in the past when the Jets were doing things and fans were saying to me, I think it's their year. And there's been times in the past that I've said, I don't see it. I think there's a little bit of a house of cards factor going on here. Hey, this year, I was full in on the Jets. I didn't think they'd get past Dallas, but I was fairly certain they were going to get past the Colorado Avalanche. I couldn't have been more wrong. So for people like us who see the team every day and follow the Jets, they were a little bit of an enigma. It's really that way for the national media. Like, there's a lot of things that they ask. I get a lot of conversations about the fan issue and the seats not being, all sold out this year. And I think if you've been listening to me on KNR, you know my thoughts on that. And, I share a lot of that. It basically boils down to don't be beaten down too much on Jets fans. This isn't people who don't love their hockey team. I think there needs to be a reciprocation between the organization and the fans to make sure both feel that they're respected and needed and wanted. But as far as the team's concerned, I think people just turn around and, hey, there's a great story, and it's not my story to share, but there's a great story that was told to me about one of the major national hockey personalities and how much he believed in the Jets and how behind the scenes he was pumping their tires. And then after what happened to them, he said he really had to kind of walk out of the room with his tail between his legs, because he was telling people who were kind of casual hockey media coming in and kind of putting them in their place and didn't look like he knew what he was talking about when the Jets went out so fast. So there was a lot of belief in the Jets. People are kind of baffled as to what happened and what went wrong here. Can be hard to explain. I mean, we just touched on it. I just think what I've seen here and what seems very obvious to me, Huss, is I don't know that I think that the Jets took a step backwards. I mean, maybe I don't know, maybe, once they got punched in the gut by the Colorado Avalanche, they didn't really have much of a response. But what I see is a whole bunch of teams, and I've said this before, when the Jets were rolling the way they were at Christmas time, is that the Jets giving the very best they have against a league, especially other top teams that are just kind of rounding into midseason form? Because that to me is starting to look like the only conclusion I can draw from this, that the Jets hit their very best at a time when most other teams, especially the good teams, are just trying to put points in the win column and get to a specific place and then have another gear to get into. That to me is the only explanation I can come up with this year, that the Jets were in fifth gear and had their pedal to the metal and the engine in the red as we went into games 79, 78, or 78, 79, so on and so forth. And then what we saw from Colorado was like, okay, now it's time to show our best, and the Jets had already been showing their best.
What you hearing anything about Ehlers? And I guess the other side of it is Brendan Dillon DeMello, Sean Monahan, who all could be potentially unrestricted free agents. And if all three of those guys aren't around, that adds a lot more on the to-do list for Kevin Cheveldayoff.
I'll get into a variation of some kind of general, some a little more specific. Everyone's talking about everything with Nikolai Ehlers. To me, he seems like, there's, probably two or three guys who are the guys that the whole league is kind of talking about where they're going. He's that guy. So it's hard to really decipher what would be legitimate potential trades versus, just, hey, I think he would fit here. Hey, I think he would fit here. Hey, I think he would fit here. Right. Hearing about Brendan Dillon, the only thing that I keep hearing about him over and over again is he seems pretty intent on going to unrestricted free agency at this stage and seeing what else is out there. An interesting one that I heard is that Johnny Gaudreau has really been reaching out to Sean Monahan and making overtures towards him. By no means a primary source, but it's popped up a couple times and been told to me that Johnny Gaudreau would sure love to be reunited with Sean Monahan. When I try to think of teams that fit, like I think one of the reasons you would have hope as a Jets fan to bring Sean Monahan back is because I think he's a fit. He's a player that they need, a player that they like. They probably have, compared to other teams, the money to spend on keeping him here. They have the need to keep him here. Otherwise, you're turning around and you're talking about trying to fix that second line center spot all over again. I do believe the Jets have room for internal growth with Cole Perfetti on that second line next year, but I do not believe that putting him at center is the solution to that, which means I think they need Sean Monahan quite a bit. But a player like Sean Monahan would probably go a long way on that Columbus Blue Jackets roster because they've got so much youth. He's the kind of guy they could really learn from, while at the same time taking their current star in Johnny Gaudreau and giving him, an asset that he could really, really use.
Hey, speaking of Columbus, I'm sure there's lots of talk about Laine.
Oh, yeah. Definitely a lot of talk. And the Finnish media is down here. A lot of talk with them.
What are they saying? Like that, have you talked to any of those? I'd be fascinated to hear what the Finns are talking about, because they know him well. I'm sure they were following him as he was away from the league this year. Like, I think we'd all agree that a fresh start, he's too talented a player to be in the rut that he's been in for the last couple of years in Columbus. But Sean, I'm sure you'd agree with the uncertainty around Laine and the fact that he's got 2 years left on his deal at just about $9 million a year. It is not going to make trading him very easy.
So there's a mix when you're chatting with the Finnish media, and it's not a huge contingent. So I don't want to give up what certain people are saying, but there are thought process on both sides. And I've talked with pretty much all the Finnish media down here and in Edmonton and all over the place to kind of get a gauge on this situation here. But there's a lot of people, listen, this is how the Finnish media works. You come into the league and they are your boosters. They are telling your stories. Like when Patrick Laine was doing what he was doing in Winnipeg, the stories of his exploits were told loudly and often by the Finnish media, who often came into town. The one thing about the Finnish media is that if they feel that they've been boosting you for a number of years and you're not giving a full effort, they'll be the first ones to call it out. They're not the media that hides that kind of thing. They like to hold, players accountable. So you think of a guy like Uli Levy, drafted by the Vancouver Canucks a couple of years ago. There was a lot of frustration in the Finnish media with him, and that there was a belief within the media there that he wasn't giving all he should have been giving to get to where he got to. He clearly never made it, and the Finnish media wrote about it and wrote that he wasn't committed enough to make it, right? So I think that there's certain members of the Finnish media that take a look at Patrick Laine and think that his commitment, now we all know he's dealing with mental health issues. We all know, that he entered the program. So I don't want to, this is not me saying this. I do think that there's a feeling that leading up to that, and who knows how much that had to do with it, that there needed to be more effort put in by Patrick Laine. I believe that's what's been written about him back in Finland. I think he's been very frustrated that that's been written about him. I also know that there's, a number of other voices in the Finnish media that really think that you go out and take a risk on a player like this and get him in the right situation, that there could be an explosion with this player. My personal belief, I think Patrick Laine, by the conversations that he's had, felt a little bit alienated in the Winnipeg Jets dressing room and was able to do what he was with the Jets in spite of that happening. I don't think he got into a very good situation when he went to Columbus. I've said this, it would be no secret to the media that I've been talking about, because I've watched Marty St. Louis work with the players that he's worked with in Montreal, what he's done with their first overall pick, who came into the league and people were beating down on him. And he, at the tail end of this year, is starting to look like they've got a star there in Slavkovsky. Suzuki is coming up into being a point per game player. And we all saw what he did in the playoffs that year. They went to the Cup final. He knows how to work with stars. Sean Monahan, when he was coming to Winnipeg, I knew was going to be a good fit because what Marty St. Louis had told me about him in the Hockey Night in Canada games I'd covered, and how he was able to kind of get him going. I think Marty St. Louis understands superstars. I think he understands non-superstars. He said it to me best. I've been the guy who didn't get drafted, the guy who couldn't make the NHL, the guy who, once he got in, was barely holding on. I've been every single guy on a hockey team. I understand all those guys. I think if you got a player like Patrick Laine to Montreal underneath the superstar tutelage of Marty St. Louis, with the kind of assets there who would be able to get him the puck, like, I'm a believer. We saw too much from Patrick Laine when he was a young man to not think he doesn't have it in him to be a superstar again under the right circumstances. This is a guy, to me, that went through a lot in his NHL career that have kind of torn him down a little bit. If he got someplace where they were committed to building him up, he could be a real dangerous pickup.
Hey, Ren, before we go, what do you think the chances are that you're on another plane back to Edmonton as opposed to coming back to Winnipeg to see the fam?
Oh, okay. I'll say this. The Edmonton Oilers' last series against the Dallas Stars, we look at that series and we think they got, even though it was 6 games, they got past Dallas somewhat handily. We forget there was a moment they were down 2-1 in that series and were getting run out of the building in Game 4 in the first period, and then suddenly clicked and then just took off and didn't look back. I take a look at the Edmonton Oilers, that last period of Game 3, when they almost come back. They basically looked like they were on the way to coming back, ran out of time. They've run the show for the last 4 periods in this series. They've outscored the Panthers, I believe, 10-1 in that time. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I will say this. I'm seeing parallels between this series and last series where it seemed like something clicked for the Edmonton Oilers, and all of a sudden, all those things that make them scary start piling up and piling up and piling up. Now, I think they need to play near mistake-free hockey for the rest of the series in order to win this. I don't see them doing that. They still made too many mistakes in game 4, if you ask me. I think, a couple of posts that the Florida Panthers hit shaped that game. A couple of phenomenal saves by Stuart Skinner made that game look a little bit different than it was actually like. The truth lies somewhere in between with these two teams. The Oilers were the best team in game 1. They didn't win. It was kind of a split game. In game 3, they didn't win. They blew them out in game 4. This to me has been a coin toss series so far. The coin flip just went in the other direction of the Florida Panthers a few too many times for the liking of the Edmonton Oilers. It's too close a series for me to think that the Edmonton Oilers are going to pull this out, but I'm not going to say they won't, because Huss, at the beginning of the year, as the people who watch my podcast know, I picked the Edmonton Oilers to win it all, and I'm not going to back out of it now. I've said it should be handled like this. If you are Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, they should probably have taken a look at each other when they went down 3-0 and said, what an opportunity we have lying in front of each other. We are building our mystique. We are building, what our legacy, what people will always remember from us. We know Connor McDavid is now the leader, the most assists ever in a single playoffs. If those two players can add to their mystique and their legacy, two of the very few players to lead their team back from down 3-0 in the Cup final and win it all, that's a story we would talk about Connor McDavid for the rest of our lives. What an opportunity lying in front of those two players.
Yeah, it would also be a big storyline of around Paul Maurice if that were to happen.
My goodness, yes.
That's a few games away from really talking about seriously.
No doubt.
Thanks so much for taking the time to jump on with us. Travel safely. Enjoy the game tomorrow. I'm sort of personally pulling that you'll be back to Edmonton because I think we'd all like a little bit more hockey in this series.
Yeah.
And regardless of what happens, I'll look forward to seeing you and Weaver down in Vegas next week for what should be a real fun week with a lot happening around the National Hockey League. Appreciate it, my man.
Anytime, my friend, and say hi to Hammy for me when you get him on. Congrats on your guys' podcast launch.
Will do. Hey, appreciate it. Thanks a lot. There's Sean Reynolds doing the thing for Sportsnet down at the Cup final. And we'll miss Rennie tomorrow at the ball game, but I think Ken's going to join us and some of our other regulars. And of course, looking forward to seeing all of you there tonight. This Friday, we're back at Princess Auto Stadium, Bombers and Lions. We're going to talk Bombers with Jeff coming up in just a moment. Of course, looks like we're going to have some nice weather. Plan to get there early. Princess Auto tailgate party gets going at 5:30 p.m. $3.50 popping hot dogs, $5 beers, inflatables for the kids, entertainment, and more. And then it's time to get into Princess Auto Stadium and get loud and hopefully see the Bombers win their first game of the season. Not going to be easy, though, against a BC team with an impressive win on the weekend. And in addition to Princess Auto Stadium being full for the game on Friday, it is definitely going to be the place to be on Canada Day. Don't forget, the Canada Day celebration gets going on at noon. Bring the whole family down. It is completely free. They're going to have entertainment all day, food trucks, crafts and activities for kids, and then the main stage gets going on at 3 p.m., headlined later on by Doc Walker and the Sam Roberts Band. You don't have to buy a ticket. All you got to do is circle it on your calendar and make sure you're there celebrating Canada with Princess Auto and the Bombers down at Princess Auto Stadium on Monday, July 1st. And, of course, if you do want to pop in to Princess Auto for the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around, hit them up on Panet Road or Portage Avenue West, and you can shop it online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. First day of summer, Friday night game, Bombers BC. I hope they maybe added a little extra Canadian club to the order for the stadium on the weekend because, of course, Canadian Club is the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Canada's best, oldest, most famous Canadian whiskey around. And while it and the Beam Suntory family of spirits are available throughout the stadium, don't forget about Canadian Club and ginger ale as well. Unbelievable summer drink available in cans, both at the stadium and at your local beer vendor. And of course, if you want the great taste of Canadian Club, you can always pick it up at your local Manitoba liquor marts as well. Hey, our friends at Wallace & Wallace are busy right now. because they are the fencing and overhead door specialists in Winnipeg, serving residential and commercial customers since 1946. If you need the security and protection of a new fence or have wintered in a number on your old one, they have you covered with vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood fences. And if you need a new garage door, they also have Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors. Give Wallace & Wallace a call, 452-2700. The Wallace & Wallace team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. You can also visit them online for more information at wallacefences.com or pop down and see them at their showroom, open to the public on Lowson Crescent off of Kenniston. And hey, a shout out to our friends at F Apparel. I know they're busy right now getting all those grads set up for high school graduations, and congrats to all the grads coming up over the next couple weeks here in the city. They're also ready for wedding season. And guys, if you're looking in your closet, realize you need to up your menswear game, you need to get down to F Apparel as well. Custom suits beginning at $400, chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, an incredible selection of menswear accessories. And if you are in a wedding party or having a wedding, make sure to talk to the guys about a 15% discount when the fellas get their suits from F for the big day. F Apparel is at 190 Smith Street downtown. Make an appointment at F, that's EPHapparel.com. All right, let's bring in the hammer. Don't forget, folks, CFL 110 Wednesdays here on the Winnipeg Sports Talk channel. Hammy, great feedback for our first show, and great to have you back on the program. How are you? How was your weekend?
My weekend was great, Huss. Yeah, bringing it 110, CFL 110. It was an awesome debut last week. Looking forward to doing more of it. My weekend was terrific. I extended my trip to Ottawa for the Bombers Red Blacks game, which we'll get into a weekend at the family cottage, which is also just outside of Ottawa. So awesome weekend, lots of sun, beautiful weather back here now. I think I got the best days in Ottawa of late. So it feels like everything's coming up me right now.
It was not the best of days for the Bombers, and everything is not coming up Bombers right now. 0-2 to start the season, and a ton of injuries as they get into this practice week, looking to avoid going 0-3 to the BC Lions. What was your takeaways from the game in Ottawa, first and foremost? One that was definitely right there for the taking at the end, but they weren't able to finish the job.
Yeah, I wrote leading into this that we were going to see, a picture of who the 2024 Winnipeg Blue Bombers would be. I didn't mean it to be hyperbolic in the sense that, had they lost the game, they were going to be trash, and had they won the game, they were going to somehow, recapture some of the magic they've seen in previous years. But I just see a struggling team. I see a team that has a lot of holes in it. I see a team that lacks depth. I see a team that has an aging core. All the things we kind of been writing about and talking about over the last few years that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have just been able to kind of sidestep and, not really have it affect their season. And, you look around the league, and I don't know if the league's getting better altogether or getting worse altogether, but it doesn't seem to be, that juggernaut, which has been the Bombers for years, of course, and BC even looks beatable. And, teams like Calgary look better, and you got the comeback kids in Saskatchewan. It just looks like a little bit more of an even playing field. And I'd say my greatest takeaway off the field, my greatest takeaway on the field start would be just an anemic offense for a second straight game. We're not used to seeing a Zach Collaros-led attack be as choose your adjective, not as the opposite of good. So it hasn't been a great effort or great results from an execution and all those things from the offense, but off the field there's a slow but steady realization brewing, talking to players after the game, that this is going to be a different season. This isn't going to be a year where they're dominating, and they already see that. They're 0-2. They're last place in the West. So it's uncharted territory. It's still very much a small sample size. I expect this team to figure things out. But when you factor in the injuries that we've already seen this year and all those other things I just said, I just don't think this will be a smooth sailing for the blue and gold as we've seen ever since they won that cup in 2019.
Jeff, I was listening to Doug Brown speak about it after the game. We talked about it certainly on the show on Friday. If there's one area of concern, there's many, but if there's one to focus on, To me, it's the interior of the offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Because that O-line, when when they're having issues, it affects the running game, it affects short yardage, and it's very clear it's been affecting Zach Collaros' comfort in the pocket, and that has led to some mistakes that have ended up being very, very costly for the Bombers.
Yeah, I mean, it's been, for years, the identity of the offense for sure was, went through the offensive line and how dominant they were, how nasty they were, how physical and relentless they were. They had that reputation right across the league. Some teams would call them, cheap and dangerous. Others would call them, spectacular and impossible to beat. And, it's probably somewhere in the middle there. And they've really have been the bloodline of this team and this offense for a very long time. And we're seeing cracks in it. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. Obviously with the departure of Jamarcus Hardrick, that leaves a massive hole at right tackle that Eric Lofton is still very much, getting used to and certainly not thriving at this stage. I'm not going to say he's been awful, but he is no Jamarcus Hardrick, and we already knew that heading into this season, and the Bombers would have known that too. And then you look at the interior, as you mentioned, of the offensive line, and guys like Patrick Neufeld, who have been very, very, very good on that offensive line and still a very good player. You're starting to see some of the effects of not having a training camp and being in your 30s. I mean, that's, he's getting beat straight up. I mean, that happened against the Red Blacks. You have guys like Chris Kolinkowski, who's coming off 2 big years. Well, he's getting beat he's getting beat as well. And so it's not the new guys that are necessarily, the ones that are providing gaping holes in that line. It's kind of the unit, and whether it's individual performance or just the collective performance of all 5, because that's a huge part of this. That was a huge part heading into training camp. And certainly if you could read the body language of Mike O'Shea, he's not going to tip off much. But when I asked him about the offensive line and getting those 5 guys, finally on the field and getting them in sync and getting that footwork, to be unified there, you could tell from his eyes that he was, it's like almost like it's about time. We've had that because, Patrick Neufeld did miss the first couple of weeks at camp. And so that has been a sore spot for it. It doesn't help that you have your star running back in Brady Oliveira still not practicing after missing last week. And it doesn't help that you have your biggest threat in Kenny Lawler also, gone for at least 6 games with a broken arm. None of those things, are good news. But I think what the big difference here is we're used to seeing this team, deal with adversity, deal with players coming in and out, dealing with not having Kenny Lawler for the first 6 games last year and really making, really having to be no issue. Well, here we are, all these problems are compounding. And when you factor in a team that, isn't as good as previous years, you see what we've seen: tough battles in games and on the wrong side of the winner's circle.
And I'll echo what you said about the offensive line being sort of the identity of the team. The foundation of this team has been both sides of the line of scrimmage. And while the offensive line certainly hasn't looked like it has in the past, the defensive line had lost some key guys, including Jackson Jeffcoat in the offseason, and now has been decimated by injuries, Jeff. As concerning as it's been on the O-line, I would suggest that the D-line right now might be even more of a hot spot for the Bombers going into this game against BC on Friday.
Certainly going into this game, Huss, when you factor in the 2 injuries to Miles Fox and Celestin Haba, that already adds Taekwon Garbett, who is already on the 6-game injured list. He got injured in camp. He's another defensive lineman. And then you have a guy in Cameron Lawson who's not coming back this year, it doesn't seem like. He's at least out for a very long time this year. I would be shocked if he was back in back in a Bombers jersey this season. So that's a massive hit. Now, the D-line and the defense as a whole has been a pleasant surprise, under new defensive coordinator Jordan Younger.
It's not why they lost, that's for sure.
Certainly not why they lost. I would say that, I even wrote about it. They wasted 2 great defensive efforts with a bad performance on offense and bad performance on special teams. You're not going to win with a pretty good defense and the other 2 not clicking. But with that group, I think, if there was any kind of silver lining in it all, Huss, is that if you've heard, we've heard from, really from the end of camp, because we hadn't really had a chance to talk to Jordan Younger, but we did hear from the players in the first 3 weeks of practices there that it was the identity of this defense was going to be versatility. So, and the way that was explained to me was a ton of athletes on that side of the ball that can play a bunch of different positions. Well, they're going to have to play a bunch of different positions. They're going to have to do some dancing on the defense and moving guys, to different spots and places. Because, not only did they take a hit on that D line, but Dietrich Nichols isn't practicing today. So if he can't go this week, you're going to have a shuffle in the secondary. So there is some question marks there. Certainly, it's not good timing for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, given the other two phases of this game and special teams and offense, just not finding their groove yet, to have your defense suffer that many key players. I talked to Adam Bighill after that game, and obviously not the result they were looking for or hoped for. He was really, really, really proud of the effort the defense put forth to lose that many guys, not just that many guys, but key contributors. And again, on that defensive line, which is, as you mentioned, the foundation is of this team, and any good team in this league is how you perform in the trenches. And so to take those hits, it's only 4 guys right now I count on that roster as far as defensive end and defensive linemen. And that doesn't, when you have 4 guys in 4 spots, that doesn't allow for a rotation. So you're going to see I imagine you'll see some added bodies here. If you've already seen a couple added bodies, we'll see some added bodies to the roster, I imagine, this week, and helping out that area of the D.
Well, one added body is that Chris Smith, who was, the one bright spot of a return game that was very concerning for the team coming in with the loss of Janarian and Grant. It's safe to say that his addition to the roster will be welcome, considering the lack of success they've had returning anything so far this year.
Got that remote and get my hair flip in there with the camera. Oh well. I think not just even go back to the D line, Huss, like Sean Oakman's available. What might he be doing right now? Would he be an offer? I don't know. The thing about the Bombers is they don't tend to go after other players from other teams that are how do I explain this? That are established in their position.
A little more proven.
They didn't want Sean Lemon last year. Sean Lemon could have been a Winnipeg Blue Bomber. Now, obviously, some of the news post Grey Cup isn't so shining on him, but he's still racking up stacks in the CFL. And then so we'll see. We'll see where the help comes from. I'm just not 100% positive. I don't think I answered your question, Huss, because it kind of threw me off there. I don't even know if I remember what you asked.
Well, we were talking about the returners with Chris Smith.
Of course. So the Chris Smith part too is it's great, man. But is he, like, it was amazing what he did. It was a 109-yard return, but is he going to be able to do that a lot? Like, it's great that he did that. Was that
they could use one of those big time right now?
Oh, absolutely. Was that a flash in the pan? Was that just a sign of more to come? Obviously, the Bombers are hoping for that side, but that's the other part, man. I mean, to me, it's just this team is doing things that is uncharacteristic. I liken the return man to their decision to go with a new return guy here or an unproven guy here, very much in the way that they changed off their stance on kickers, right? They used to pay through the roof for a guy like Justin Medlock because they prioritized and knew the importance of making, of scoring field goals. Well, Janarian Grant fit that bill, for return man. He was dynamic while he was here. He set club records. It was important. It was a priority for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers to have a return guy, and it showed on special teams. I don't know. I mean, I do kind of know. I mean, it's quite obvious that the money spent in other places, the money spent to bring back an offense that, ironically is not performing to anywhere near that top level attack that they were in 2023. They spent all the money to bring back those players. They had to cut pennies somewhere, and they've cut them in special teams. And Chris Smith could very well be, a decent returner. There's nothing to suggest that he won't be with the 109, but there's also nothing to suggest he's going to be some awesome, Grant in the making with one preseason touchdown. But the frustration, I think, for a lot of fans, and what I've certainly been hearing is, before this, you had Myron Mitchell returning balls. Well, Myron Mitchell had one kick return in the entire preseason, and there were other guys, Crookshank, Van. There's probably one or two other guys that got a lion's share of the returns, and they were just cut. So it was like, what was it that you saw in Mitchell that was so impressive in that one turn that you decided to cut everybody else and give it to a guy who you didn't even give a shot to in the preseason? So it's a confusing thing. Again, we're here in week 3 now, getting into week 3. It's going to be, Chris Smith. I think, if it adds up and he's fine to go here, that's great news for them. But it's still no guarantee that the special teams is going to be awesome after, this guy had a great return, but then got hurt either on that play or immediately after that play.
Hey, let me ask you this, because you've covered Mike O'Shea for a long time. You've been in that room hundreds of games and practices and talking to Osh. You were there in Ottawa. It was somewhat of a bizarre game with the timeout or the delay for an hour and then coming back onto the field, coming down on the step of the goal line and not being able to get in. What how would you gauge where O'Shea is at from what he gives out to the public and to the media, and what he's thinking about his team and the challenge that he has going forward for a team that has just won consistently for 4 years, that all of a sudden finds itself in a very unfamiliar position early in the season?
You know what? I see a lot of the same, which is not surprising. Like, he's not, Mike O'Shea isn't going to panic, just like he isn't going to pat himself on the back after a pair of wins. Like, if they were 2-0, he'd be just as boring. Now, I do think there's a little bit more of, how would you explain it? A little bit more of desire to explain himself, or the questions are tailored different. So he's asked to, what went wrong here? What went wrong here? What went wrong here? When he's so used to being, how impressive was this? What did you think of your defense? What did you think of your offense lighting up in the first half and whatnot? So you can definitely tell there's a bit of a sense of urgency brewing. I think that's just natural. But at the same time, it is still that boring week to week. Mike O'Shea doesn't want guys lamenting losses. He doesn't want guys, enjoying wins for too long. He just wants them to move on to the work week. And as far as the process goes, if they follow the process, a process that's worked very well for them in recent years, then he's confident that they'll get out of this. He's confident that they'll have a strong season as long as they stay committed. Now, the issue to that is I think there's a little bit of, and we saw this certainly after the week 1's loss, Mike taking ownership of that loss and saying he's not, he hasn't prepared his players as well. Now, is that a sign of concern by the head coach? Is that an attempt to take the attention off the players and onto the coach? Could be a bit of both. But I do think that there is a little bit of, I don't want to say shock in that they're like reeling from this, but I do think there's a little bit of shock that they're 0-2 in the season and they're trying to figure out why they're not executing, why they're not winning games, essentially. And so I think there is a little bit more of a tighter feel. It's way less relaxed, but I do think you do, when we have talked to Mike, particularly after the games, I think there's enough there in his mind that the solution is out there. It's just he needs to find it. The coaching staff needs to figure it out, and they need to bring out the best of this roster that I just don't think they've been able to do through 2 weeks here.
Dalton Schoen wasn't in practice today. You got to hope that he's back at some point. But especially, without Kenny Lawler, with the predicament that the defense is in right now, it is very clear that Zach Collaros is going to be given every opportunity to earn that fat check that makes him amongst the highest paid in the entire Canadian Football League. And the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are going to need their quarterback to play at that level if they're going to win football games starting on Friday.
Yeah, and when in doubt, when facing a 1st and goal from the 7, just bring Chris Streveler out. If you didn't think he could get you 7 yards and 3 runs, then why did you sign him this offseason? But moving back to your original point.
Well, to be honest, just quickly on that, if we saw what was happening on short yardage earlier in the game, I kind of understand why they didn't go for that. It's one thing to say, Streveler, go ahead and do it. It's another thing when your offensive line is a yard and a half back in your on the other side of the line of scrimmage when you're moving the football. I mean, I think that was a realistic concern. Like in normal
Okay, well, Zach
situations.
Collaros finished 15 for 33 in his passing. So he was less than 50% passing. So, like, I understand what you're saying. They didn't do any designed special runs with Strevler. They just ran him up the gut when you needed a 1 or 2 yards, and he would get those things. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and you're at a point right now where you can't get into a huddle with Chris Strevler, who would put his life on the line for this organization, and your O-line can't push the other team for victory, then this team has way bigger problems than we might think. So but as far as the quarterback play, I mean, I still think we have better days for Zach Collaros. Like, I don't think this is a sign of the times or that he's declining in any stretch of the imagination. I mean, it's quite stark to see some of the passes he was throwing in training camp. And I understand his training camp. It's not live bullet games and whatnot, but they were some pretty impressive throws. I just think it's a matter of getting on the same page with his receivers. And, you know, I don't feel like they've tested the ball that far. They haven't gone that deep. It's been a little bit of, you know, lack of creativity here with Buck Pierce, to be quite frank. I mean, I think it's one of those things where this, you know, okay, Johnny August, you know, you don't have your lead back in Brady Oliveira. Well, where's Nick Dembski getting into the mix of things? Like, you know, you're only going to run Johnny Augustine for 7 carries, and, you know, bring in some other, you know, change up pace kind of things. I just felt like it was very predictable, and you know, made Ottawa's defense, which is a good unit, look like a great defense. And I just, you know, when you look at what they did this offseason, you know, are we really led to believe that many holes in the offensive line is going to, you know, topple down the entire thing? Because there wasn't really an exciting play in that entire game until Wheatfall took one up the left sidelines. And so I think the Bombers need to be stretching that attack a little bit more and leaning into a guy like Zach Collaros, who still has, you know, some very good football ahead of him here. It's just been a little bit vanilla, to be quite frank.
Yeah, listen, I mean, you mentioned the Wheatfall play, that bomb that ended up going just about for a touchdown. He also had that beautiful ball to Nick Dembski. That had to be about 60% of the passing yardage for the entire game. And, you know, just back to our conversation about, you know, Strevler and running him in the O-line, I think if there was any sign that the Bombers didn't really have a lot of confidence in what was happening at the line of scrimmage when they had the football, it was the fact that Johnny Augustine only had 7 carries. Although, to be fair, I mean, he did get, 31 yards or so? He was like about 4.5 yards per carry average.
Yeah.
I didn't think that it was like they were getting caved in. I just think that based on the decisions that were made by the coaching staff, by Buck and by Mike O'Shea, that they didn't have a lot of confidence that they were going to put that game in the hands of their running game and figured that they'd let the quarterback go win it. They didn't, and, you know, we can Monday morning quarterback all we want. But, I mean, it just does seem like they're realizing what a lot of us are seeing as well, and that it's not an easy run right now for the guys in the line of scrimmage right now. And that is a far, far cry from, really, I keep going back to it, what's been the foundation of the Bombers' success in the Walters and O'Shea era.
Sure, and I mean, I also think, you know, there is some blame to lay on the receivers. There were some drop balls that's been uncharacteristic these last 2 weeks over the last, you know, compared to the last few years. But yeah, I mean, I think that they're, you know, I think, you know, your argument to me, it would make more sense if it wasn't pouring rain all game. Like, it was raining all game. And so, you know, while I think you want to get into a rhythm with your quarterback, I think you know, I don't think you have much of a problem as offensive coordinator giving the ball to Zach Collaros to win the game, or, you know, taking the ball out of Johnny Augustine's hands in comparison. Sure. Yeah. Okay. But I just think it's one of those where the weather conditions called for it. You need to mix a bit of both. And I just think if you want to punch a team in the face, you got to establish a run game. And it doesn't have to be Johnny Augustine 18 times. Can be, you know, Nick Dembski can be thrown into the mix. Other guys can be thrown into the mix. We've seen lots of that. Chris Strevler could have come out and added some energy, because that's what I think is really missing here over the last 2 weeks, is that energy from this offense. You know, that there hasn't been a rhythm in 2 weeks. They haven't done enough over a decent stretch of time to suggest that they've clicked at any level. So why not bring in some, new looks, some creativity, bring in a guy like Chris Strevler? And I hate being the guy who's recommending plays as if I'm some kind of football guru or offensive, expert here. Buck Pierce doesn't have 10 times more knowledge than I do, but it just seems like if you need something, if you need some excitement, a burst of energy in there, establishing that run game, mind you, against a good Ottawa Red Blacks D line, but still, I do think it was underutilized. And because it didn't help open up that passing attack that clearly the Bombers wanted to, or were leaning on in that game.
Hammer, Wednesday we'll be getting back together for episode 2 of CFL 110. I know we kind of strictly focused on the Bombers here, but I'm sure we'll be touching on the Riders, who had quite the comeback last night against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And just from a league perspective, what a way to kick off the home season for BC, with 50 Cent in the house, putting, $54K into the building. And, there's some very interesting stories in a very wide open CFL West, although, those Montreal Alouettes are going to be at the top of the power polls again this week at 2-0 after beating the Bombers and Elks to start off. I'm looking forward to Wednesday to getting away from just what's happening here in the Peg and hitting the other 8 teams in the league as well.
Oh, there's plenty of drama to talk about, including that 50 Cent stuff. Apparently, people were all mad that 50 Cent brought in 50,000 fans, but how many stayed? We'll dive into that drama when we have our show on Wednesday. But looking forward to it, man. Always a fun time to talk 3-down football, and it doesn't matter, what week it is. There's something to talk about and something ridiculous to discuss.
Yeah, well, we'll fire it up on Wednesday, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel here on YouTube and search CFL 110 wherever you get your favorite podcast to make sure you're getting the latest from us here at WST on that. Hammer, we'll talk to you in a couple days. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks so much again, Huss. And just one last thing, I'll plug it. So I spent 7 months digging into childcare in the province. That's why I wasn't covering as much sports. So that series is out. Part 1 dropped on Friday, part 2 today, and 3, 4, 5, and 6 the rest of the week. Me and my colleague Katrina Clark spent a good chunk of the winter diving into that, what is a very severely broken system, and hopefully changes on the horizon. So be sure to check that out, along with all my Bomber stuff coming this week.
Yeah, listen, for anybody with young children that deals with with childcare in the province, must read stuff all week long in the pages of the Winnipeg Free Press. Be well, and we'll talk to you in 48.
Take care, my friend.
There is our buddy Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press. And again, CFL 110, presented by Garage Living Winnipeg. 999-1234 coming up on Wednesday after Winnipeg Sports Talk. Hey, you know what? Monday, it's always that day. You've had a big weekend. You're thinking, what would go great today after the show? A trip down to Hoagie Boys on South Osborne for some of the best sandwiches around. Hoagie Boys now famously open 7 days a week from 11:30 a.m. to 7, playing all the hits like the Italian Standard, the Adam Sanduzzi, Dr. Pepperoni, Evil Morty, Bingo Bronson. Everything is made fresh in-house, so pop by today. They also do catering and every occasion for game day. So maybe if you don't want to do any cooking in the parking lot before the game on the weekend, pop by Hoagie Boys and get some of those amazing sandwiches to add to your tailgate. And Hoagie Boys on South Osborne, give them a follow on Instagram as well. Got one of the most entertaining and hilarious Instagram pages around. And of course, Hoagie Boys from the brains behind Cosmos Food Cantina, cooking up great stuff at the beer can as well, and the food over at Next Door at 116 Sherbrooke. Big weekend over at Royal Sports with another tent sale. I'm sure they'll have another one or two again later on this summer if you did miss all the amazing deals down at Royal Sports on the weekend. Right now, though, busy. They've got, the best selection of licensed merchandise from all your favorite teams and all your favorite leagues. With Canada in the Copa, they've got all the great Canada soccer gear. And, of course, Euro's on right now with the kits from all the teams in Euro as well. So, soccer guy, get down there and get your gear to support your team coming up for the big tournaments this month. Check out while you're there softball, baseball, soccer, tennis, running, and a huge selection of bikes. It's all there at Royal Sports, 750 Pembina. On Instagram at Royal Sports Winnipeg with the latest merchandise drops and sale information. And hey, the playoff menu lives at Boston Pizza for another few days at least. Tomorrow night, it is the Oilers and the Florida Panthers. May have to pop by there after the ball game. Catch the third period and potentially the cup being given out. One thing I know will be there is the playoff menu, the wing flights, the Sicilian square footer pizza, the jalapeno popper dip, and those delicious ice cold schooners, and of course the gourmet pizzas. Join them for all of your playoff action tonight. NBA Finals, another great time to get out to BP. And hey, if you're staying at home, you can always get the great taste of Boston Pizza and those amazing wings and pizzas by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. All right, we're going to, Remis, should we do Slats first and then do Reid afterwards?
If Joey's here, then sure, let's do that.
Yeah, I think Joey's just popped in. So we are still going to talk U.S. Open. I am still sick over what happened yesterday afternoon. And not that I haven't come around on Bryson, because I have, and he absolutely deserved it. It was a phenomenal tournament. But oh my God, Rory McIlroy choking the way that he did I still feel sick for the guy. We're going to talk about that coming up with Reid Fowler of PGA Tour Live in a few minutes. But you heard us right off the top. Some big news in Winnipeg today. The Jets have two new assistant coaches, Dean Chenoweth and Davis Payne. We talked about that a little bit right off the bat. Rennie joined us to talk some hockey. We had hammered with football. But for those of you following the Seabears, Teddy Allen was sort of the face of the team in year one. He was the MVP of the entire league. He started off this season with back-to-back 40-point games, went for 39 in the last one, and today got cut. And it was a stunning release by the Winnipeg Seabears. It did indicate that there was plenty going on behind the scenes. We played you that clip of Mike Taylor, but no one we love talking Seabears with more than our pal Joey Slattery. And the Slatman joins us right now. And crazy few days for the Seabears, Joey. Great to have you back on the program, dude.
Yeah, thanks, man. Always a pleasure being on here. It's but definitely not the best news for Seabears Nation. You said he was sort of the face. I think that's definitely the case. He was the face of this franchise. The club put a lot into him too. Mike Taylor talked about how this offense was built through Teddy, and Teddy literally hangs on the side of Canada Life Center, as a Seabear and as the Seabear, I guess, face of the Seabears poster, whatever you want to call it. Didn't see this coming. Clearly it's something that's been brewing for a while, but it's going to be something we're going to have to get used to, because this kind of feels like rock bottom, if we're being honest. Things were not going well. There'd been some issues with the team throughout the year. Yesterday, seeing it play out in real time, the disputes and players getting into each other's faces. So kind of feels like this is the unexpected bottom, and you hope you can only go up from here.
At one point last year, I remember being at a game, and it looked like Teddy was ready to kill one of his teammates on the floor. And then they kind of calmed him down, and then he went out and scored another dozen points or whatever and did what he does. It seems like he is a volatile individual, and that's just what we see on the court. We played the first clip from Mike Taylor. It was a pretty damning press conference for Teddy. Gathering what you heard from the team and people that you've talked to, what happened?
Honestly, it just seems like there was a lot of discourse within the locker room in terms of just miscommunication. Teddy's a hard guy to play with. I've heard that time again because of his talent, right? He's just different. He's a really, really good basketball player, but he kind of does things on his own accord. And I think a lot of the other players were struggling with that. And, Mike Taylor is a systems guy, right? He wants to put it in the systems, and, he talks about the plays. And you kind of saw it when he got kicked out of that game against Niagara. They went back in and they started playing like a team a little bit more. They had to depend on each other because Teddy wasn't there to bail them. I wouldn't say bail them out, but wasn't there to put up the 30 to 40 points that he had been putting up to that point. And it just seems like it boiled over. Their chemistry is a huge part of basketball. This is a short season. You got to get it done. And it just seems like there were, time and time again that Mike Taylor says he was giving him chances. It looked like it was working out. And then clearly there's things that were happening behind the scenes that, we weren't privy to. That was the breaking point. But I mean, Teddy comes off as a bit of a complex individual. This is a guy that's kind of had everything against him since college. And I think he had an opportunity here in Winnipeg to really prove that, he is the guy. And I think it was on the right trajectory. And you kind of feel bad for the guy because, in my dealings with him, he is a nice guy. He's an intense guy. And a lot of these traits that we're talking about is what makes him a good player, is what made him exciting to come here and play in Winnipeg. But, at the end of the day, they felt like what was happening with Teddy Allen just wasn't aligning with, what the Sea Bears are trying to build. They are a new team. And this is a really strong message to the players here now, to the players to the future, to the fan base, that there is no one above the team. And I think there was a confusion there at one point where it did feel like we were always talking about Teddy and using the term Teddy's team, right? And then that just got pulled out right under us in a matter of less than 24 hours. 39 points yesterday, cut today. So it's and one thing I've noticed through my DMs, people are legitimately sad and mad and a whole bunch of things. And I think that's okay. I mean, that's it. He was a lovable character, a lovable player here in Winnipeg. People loved him. He did a lot for the team. I think the team acknowledges that. And, I know Teddy acknowledges, I don't think he took this for granted. I've talked to him many times. He loved Winnipeg. He loves it here. He loves the fans. I think this is something he's going to take very personally and very hard in terms of what he's losing with the connection he made with this city, because that is something he was very proud of here in Winnipeg. And I think that's something that, it's going to be hard for us to get used to, but can't even imagine what it's going to be like for him, where this was your team and suddenly you're not playing.
Yeah, maybe it makes a little more sense at why they went and signed Justin Wright Foreman next week. I think they knew that this potentially was possible. In the press conference, Coach referred to the Niagara incident. Do we know what that was? Was that an on-court thing? Was that an off-court thing?
Yeah, so the incident he's referring to is the double technicals, and then after that happened, the second technical, you are ejected from the game. And they had to escort him off. And I think there was a little bit more frustration afterwards, in terms of the dealing with Teddy and the anger of being let go or having kicked out of the game and feeling like that it was not warranted. He also mentioned there were fines from the league and within the team. He didn't get into great detail about what those fines were for. But there was definitely, and I think there was definitely something the league was looking at with the second technical in that game. I'm assuming that's what he's referring to, but didn't get clarification on that. But I do remember him saying something about they'd be going to the league to dispute the call for the second technical. But yeah, that seems to be the spot though. When you look at everything at that point, they were 3-1. They lose that game to Niagara, even though the team came together and really made a push in that Niagara game. And Niagara's a really good team. They're coming here in next week. And they're a good team. And I think the Sea Bears proved in that latter half that they can compete with these teams, and they are an elite team. But everything kind of went off from there, right? I mean, they gave up 100 points in 3 straight games, which is not something we're used to. Defensively, they've been a mess. And offensively, they've been a mess. And in that interview, if you go back and listen to it, there's a few areas where Mike Taylor goes into detail of specific situations where Teddy was letting the team down or the team was being let down because of the distractions. But I think the team was dealing so much with trying to keep it within closed doors and try to deal with things internally that it became an even bigger distraction than we know. And I think we got a glimpse of it yesterday for those that were at the game or watching it on CBL Plus. There was clearly some issues going on. There were multiple players that were in each other's faces. Byron Mullins didn't play part of the second half. So, I mean, there's a lot of questions. Today, they only answered the questions about Teddy and what led to his departure. They didn't get into the fine details of everything, but I think we got a really good idea of what the team is dealing with Teddy. And we kind of knew that coming in just based on, some of the narratives coming in that I felt were changing. I didn't see a lot of what I was reading beforehand with Teddy, but clearly there were some things, and it really seemed to take it up a notch this year. I think last year was a lot smoother. It seems this year was the year where things kind of got out of control, and I think this is just Mike Taylor saying, I have to take control of the team, even if it costs us our best player.
Yeah, and listen, that incident that I said where it looked like he was going to kill one of his teammates was kind of early on in the season, and it did seem like things got better. Obviously, came back this year, was the MVP of the league. I mean, he was the guy that they really sold this city on, and to get to this point, I mean, it's pro sports. I mean, guys that are really good get a lot more rope than the 12th man on your club.
Mm-hmm.
So for it to be this point, it's obvious that they felt they had no other choice. At the game yesterday, like Drew Mandel was there, and Drew said, no basketball expert by any means, but, being at the game last night, it seemed like Teddy was basically doing it all himself, wasn't passing very much, wasn't very engaged in on defense, and that maybe be a bit like, were you, when you were watching the game and working there yesterday, were you anticipating, maybe not this, but was it quite clear that things were kind of falling apart for the Sea Bears and internally, not because of what anyone else was doing?
Yes, and honestly, it had very little to do what was happening on the court. It seemed every time out there was more and more discussions between players, not those that feel constructive. And that was a difference that I've not seen with this team from the sidelines. Usually there is conversations, coming in from timeouts between players, but it was a lot of yelling, a lot of finger pointing. And then it got to a point where it was getting pretty heated. You're wondering, is there going to be a fight that breaks out here? And I mean, not the time you want to see that when it's Father's Day and a matinee, a 9,000 or whatever it was sellout. It's not the best. It's not the best optics for the Sea Bears. And you did feel at that point, and we talked about it on the post-game show, and Mike Taylor came on the post-game show last night and talked about it as well. That there's things that are happening and players weren't coming in with the right energy. And there was clearly something that was off with this team. Did I think Teddy Allen was going to get released today? Not a chance. But you talked about the rope and how these athletes get a ton of rope. I think they gave the rope and then there just wasn't any rope left. And it came down to the point of, we feel this is the message that I received today that I felt was being projected by the Sea Bears. It was, no one's bigger than the team. If we give him more rope, it's going to start looking bad on us. We got to cut ties as hard as it is. And I do believe it was hard. They invested a lot of time in Teddy. They wanted Teddy back. He was the number one guy they wanted back, and they made no question about that last year in the offseason. And now you got to move forward without the fan favorite, and they had the last things on the back of the jerseys. I guarantee you everybody would have a Teddy Allen jersey in the stadium that's wearing a jersey. I even saw somebody wearing his Leicester Riders jersey from England in the stands. I think it was the second game. So that just goes to show at how deep the support was and is for Teddy. People are sad. And I think another thing, and I don't, not to get all, poetic about it, but I think there was a reason that people really like Teddy, in the sense that I think he reflected what Winnipeg is in a lot of ways, the hard worker, overlooked, trying to prove himself and embracing it, right? There was something when Teddy would put his hands up and go to the crowd, you felt it. Not any player can do that and command 7, 8, 9,000, 10,000 people to get them on their feet and things like that. And I think there's a reason. I understand that people are going to be sad, upset, mad, and probably taking sides, and that's all natural. And I think that's, I don't want to say a good sign for the team, but that's how diehard this fan base is getting. That's how legitimate this team has become in the city. And you can't take away what Teddy did for this team. Teddy came in here. He made this team a real team. He gave them some credibility. He brought an MVP here. Last year, you look at all the awards the team won. A lot of it starts with Teddy and goes down. The Mike Taylors, the Simon Hildebrands, it trickles right down. Teddy's gone, and it's not a good breakup. But on the same token, that doesn't take away what he's done here. And the Sea Bears just have to build on that without him now.
Yeah. Hey, listen, it was a nice run, probably an ugly ending. He's had some very weird IG lives. I'll be making sure my notifications are on for the next one if there's anything from Teddy. And I imagine we'll probably see him again somewhere else in the CEBL, because as we said, pro sports, if you're really good, you're going to get plenty of extra chances. And there's some team out there that needs scoring that's picking up the phone to Teddy Buckets today, but it won't be again with the Winnipeg Sea Bears. Slats, big week for the team. Back at home after this road trip. Wednesday, and then coming up on the weekend as well.
Yeah, it's going to be huge. It's a new era. Honestly, I think this is, if there's going to be an up, it has to be now, because I don't think you could fall any further. This kind of feels, like I said, rock bottom. We'll see how the team responds. Right now, you've got the guard thing figured out. That's where they had all the congestion. Will they sign another American? Remains to be seen. But big game on Vancouver. If they want, or against Vancouver, if they want to make that statement, they're at home on national TV against the first place team in the West, a team that decimated them essentially in the last time they played in Vancouver. You want to make a statement that this is the team that we are without Teddy Allen. Wednesday's the night to do it. So I'm excited for it. But I don't think we've seen the last of Teddy Allen. And I don't think we've seen the last of some roster shakeups here with the Sea Bears. We'll see how that goes with that extra American spot and what's available. But I think it's already been an interesting season. Might not be successful right now, but definitely been interesting. And I think there's plenty more interest to go.
Slats, appreciate it, buddy. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for doing this.
You betcha. Anytime.
All right, there's Joey Slattery. You can follow him on Insta at Joey Slattery TV with a ton of great Sea Bears content for people that want more on the local CEBL squad. Tomorrow, looking forward to seeing you all at our Winnipeg Gold Eyes game. The patio party is set. We'll look forward to it. I believe Michael sent out information, but just for those that haven't seen it yet, everyone that has tickets, just come on down. We're going to have a little setup outside of Will Call tomorrow for everyone to pick up their wristbands on the way in. And should be fun. I think Rowicki's coming, Ken, Mike McIntyre. See if Slats wants to come too, actually, now that I think about it, and basically get the crew together. Going to be a whole lot of fun. A couple last-minute tickets available. Check out the website, winnipegsportstalk.com. Hit the Gold Eyes link if you've been waiting to get in, and we'll look forward to seeing you there. We'll be set up beforehand, about an hour before the game, so people can come in, get some eats, a couple beers before the game if you'd like, and we'll look forward to seeing you there tomorrow night for our WST patio party at the Gold Eyes game. We will get to... Listen, I'm going to give you the why not question of the day right now because we're about to talk about the U.S. Open. And as I said right off the bat, luckily we had a lot of local stuff, and I didn't get going on about this too much. But I still can't wrap my head around Rory McIlroy choking the way that he did on those final couple short putts. And I've been having conversations with Feinberg today, with Dusty on the Lock Shop. So I want to put this out to you, particularly for you golf fans. But I'm trying to compare this to another sport. But our why not question of the day today for Not Autocorp is thinking about Rory McIlroy with the way that he played all day, missing a 2-foot 11-inch putt and then a 3-foot 9-inch putt to lose by one. By any standard, it's a choke job. I love Rory. I'm sick for the guy. But can you remember, or put the question out to you all, what is, like in another sport, is there a comparison of a player, a Hall of Famer, a guy with the career accolades that Rory McIlroy has, to come up so small in such a big moment? I'm having a tough time thinking of one right now, but if you got one for us, the why not question of the day for Not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray. Give us some comparison to what happened with Rory McIlroy yesterday on those final few holes and missing two of the shortest putts of his career to not only miss a playoff, to not win, but miss a playoff because Bryson DeChambeau came up with one of the biggest shots in recent major championship history with that bunker shot in 18 and sinking the putt to win. For a little more on the U.S. Open, we caught up a little earlier with our pal Reid Fowler from PGA Tour Live and ESPN+. Reid, first of all, it is great to talk to you again. Thanks so much for jumping on. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I wore black, Edge. I wore black for just to mourn the loss of another runner-up finish because last year. So I was thinking about how to open this with you because it's been a while since we spoke, and I want to take it back probably last year to the U.S. Open when Fitzpatrick won, and I had Will Zalatoris outright. And I publicly went on, I don't know how many different, maybe a dozen shows that week. And I said, if there's one guy I'm fading at the top, it's Fitzpatrick, right? And then I had Will Zalatoris. And so the sand trap on 18, the country club out there in Boston and Brookline, did me dirty, right? So I had a runner-up last year at the U.S. Open. I'm thinking, new father, right? This is my second year as a father. So I'm thinking, okay, this time, it'll be better. It'll be a lot better. And guess who had Rory McIlroy this year as well? And outdone by another sand trap hustler. So it's been a little hurtful. I've had back-to-back runners-up at U.S. Open. So I'm there. I'm close. I feel like Rory. I don't know if it's going to be a when, maybe an if. I don't know if I'm ever going to win a winning bet at a U.S. Open. I saw that live from Ben Cooley. He's got a great article on Rory. So it was an eventful, so much fun to watch though. Such a great U.S. Open.
Oh, the tournament was incredible. And I mean, listen, I mean, with apologies to Bryson, because we will get to him, and deserving, incredible. Like, you will get over this before Rory McIlroy does. I predict that. I mean, Reid, Remis and I were just talking about before we brought you on. What's the stat? 479 for 479 from 3 feet this season. And he does a 3-footer and a 4-footer on the final 4 holes to lose by 1. For a guy as accomplished as Rory McIlroy, with 4 major championships, one of the all-time greats, like, I can't even think of a comparable in any sport for a choke on that level.
Yeah. I mean, maybe within the same sport, you know, we've seen stuff like this from Greg Norman. We've seen it from Jean Van de Velde, right, at the British, or now the Open Championship. Maybe, you know, the Yankees going down, like they're going up 3-0 against the Red Sox, and the Red Sox come back, right? Those kind of things ring a bell. But at the same time, this has been Rory's MO since 2014, right, where he's gotten close, but he just hasn't closed it out. And it's always been this. And this is what we kind of saw with Tiger too, right? Is that the putter was, obviously Tiger would drive it not as prolifically far and straight as Rory. So that was his bugaboo a little bit. But really when it came down to a little bit, it was the putter. And now the difference between Rory and Tiger is that when it mattered, especially in the majors, Tiger would sink those putts like no other. But now what you're seeing with Rory is that just between the ears, you know, we talk about strokes gain all the time, but what do you got between the ears, right? And for as much flack as Bryson has gotten over the last handful of years, and he's admitted it was self-inflicted, he's got more of a mental fortitude right now than Rory in the majors of recent history. It's because Bryson has been there. He was almost in a playoff with Xander at the PGA, and then he comes here and he does what he does, right? So yes, as much of an indictment as it is for Rory to miss those putts, because that was asinine. For the fact that he missed a 2-foot, whatever it was, on the 16th, it was just it's just like, what do you do? You're not concentrating, right? They're talking about Bryson and they're interacting with the fans, but to me that gets him more locked in because he's a performer. That got him more locked in. With Rory, he's probably thinking about all the questions that he has to potentially answer. Oh, it's been so long, 10 years. So yeah, I give it more to what Bryson did, especially getting up and down from everywhere. Nuts. I mean, everywhere hustle. How many times was he in the native area? And yes, he got lucky, but he saved par, right? So the one where he hit off into the trees and then he saves par, I'm like, he's going to win the tournament, because that kind of momentum, especially in golf, and especially if you watch it, you better play. That type of momentum wins you tournaments, especially on Sunday. So yes, Rory, bad, but even better was Bryson.
Well, and you know what, to your point, I mean, the bunker shot on 18, an all-time shot. Although, unfortunately, I really do think in 10 years, when we look back to this, that is going to be a footnote, and all anyone is going to remember is 16 and 18 and McIlroy gagging on those 2 putts. You're around McIlroy, I mean, on tour or regularly. He is, I mean, an incredible ambassador of the tour. So we don't need to go through everything that he's been through in the last couple of years, but
right.
Were you surprised that he just basically pulled out right afterwards? I mean, I can't blame him, to be honest, but he's always been a guy that sort of faced the music, and it was interesting to see. I think it just put into perspective how crushing of a loss and the circumstances around it. Yeah.
I mean, that was just straight emotion. And this is so funny, right? Because there's all these conversations, and I'm sure you guys talked about it, you know, it just sort of the past handful of months, is with the WNBA, with the NBA, with athletes and showing emotion, right? Obviously with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and all these things happening, right? And the backlash that a lot of people are getting, you know, that just, why is it different? Why can't we have emotion in sports, right? Like that's the big thing. And I know this is kind of like an apples and oranges argument or statement, but that's just pure emotion, right? Bryson showing pure emotion on the golf course, interacting with the fans. And I've talked and I've, hung out with Bryson in a professional manner, not like we're boys, but like I've been around him, and emotionally, he is so invested in the game of golf. So when he speaks about golf or he's doing that stuff, that's really him. Yes, there's a performative aspect to it. And he's mentioned that with his YouTube channel, social media, and the ambassador of golf and live golf, whatever it is. There's that aspect to it. But these guys are emotional. They're people. And so that reaction, and you saw it from Rory after Bryson made that putt, after that bunker shot, and when he made that putt, pure emotion. You saw the emotion from Bryson, right? Yes, it might be a little played up for the cameras, but that's really him. That's really who Bryson is. And so when we see, Rory turning those tires and just whipping out with that Lexus SUV, he's like, I want a GTFO as fast as I can because I don't want to answer questions about calling off my divorce. I don't want to answer questions about now is Liv and the PGA merger closer than ever. I don't want to answer questions about is Bryson now the face of this. I understand it, but people are going to have their opinions about why he did it. But I get it. I'd kind of feel the same way if I was that close and I missed two putts that could have easily won me my first major in a decade. So I get it.
And quieted a lot of noise that has been around him. I mean, it was right there. I'll say this: the next time Rory McIlroy's in front of a microphone, that will be the ratings will be high. The Golf Channel will be putting that one on a loop for about a day when it happens. As far as Bryson goes, listen, we all know that he's gone to live, and essentially shows up 4 times a year now for most golf fans. I mean, nobody watches live. I mean, I'm sure. Listen, we all know they've got world-class players. Bryson does seem to be the one guy that's benefited from it, though. I mean, a lot of the other guys have gone from top players in the world to sort of afterthoughts. Not so with Bryson. It's been incredible. I mean, we use a wrestling term, like it'd be like the face turn. Like he was a bit of a heel before, and now people really do love him. And I'll say this, the business afterwards, I mean, listen, he's a younger guy. He doesn't have a family. He is that performer. Like the way that he's celebrated with the fans is something that is going to only earn him more love around golf. But I mean, you've been around this game for a long time. I mean, how would you put into perspective never mind what he's done with his game, but just how Bryson DeChambeau as a figure has changed and has somehow left the tour, gone to live, and is now a far more popular figure than he ever was before when he was winning consistently.
Yeah. So number one is you have to win, right? You have to be in the lexicon. You have to be in the conversation, right? Because look, DJ was number 1 in the world. Brooks has 5 majors. And I was talking to my brother actually to kind of get off on a little tangent about who has a better career right now, Scotty Scheffler or Brooks Koepka. And initially you're like, oh, Scotty Scheffler. But when you really dive deep into the stats, Brooks Koepka has got 5 majors, 20 wins internationally and worldwide. He's got a ton of wins. So you start to realize that these guys who went over to live, like the DJs, the Cam Smiths of the world, now Rahm, Brooks, like they're kind of afterthoughts, right? Guys who were really good, who were winning on the PGA Tour at an impressive clip, who were winning majors. And now when you get someone like Bryson, to your point, he is the exception to the rule. And I remember us doing and diving into the numbers statistically, not in golf, but just viewership in general. No one ever came close to Tiger's numbers and what he pulled from of a TV standpoint until Bryson. That was the only person in modern day golf that truly changed, moved the needle, right? It was him. So when you start to think about what he's done from a content perspective, which was his biggest gripe with the PGA Tour, is that they would not allow the Bryson camp and the entourage. And trust me, like I said, I've been around it. It's deep. It is a deep entourage of people who, A, want to be around him, but B, Bryson wants to have those people around. And they wouldn't let him. They wouldn't let him shoot content, in practice rounds or just in general. They wouldn't let him do it. So now he has that aspect to his game and to his business. It's only up for him. And it makes a lot of sense. And Bryson, to your point also, he's the exception, right? He has, and I mentioned this on a pod I did before the tournament, and like I'm sure people are going to take this out of context. He's like Tom Brady in the sense that Brady doesn't need the preseason to go, 12-4 or 12-5, right, in the regular season. He just doesn't, because because Tom Brady knows his game so well. He prepares so well. He's in the gym. He's doing all this stuff. He doesn't need the reps like all these other guys do, even seasoned vets, right, who need the reps. Bryson's the same way for golf. He doesn't need he doesn't need these other tournaments, the signature events, so to speak, to get major ready. Look at what he did this year. And so it's just, he's now the prototypical player that Liv will now say to anybody on the PGA Tour who has any sort of talent, look at what Bryson is doing. He not only is his brand skyrocketing and his dollars and commas and his bank account, but he's also winning and competing in majors. And that's what all these guys want.
How many Crushers hats are they selling today, I wonder? Reid Fowler's with us from PGA Tour Live. Moving forward, we want to see this again. We want to see these guys go head-to-head again, and we'll have the Open Championship potentially. And then it's off to next year. From what you're hearing, are we any closer today than we were a few weeks ago of maybe seeing the light at the end of the tunnel for this divide in the world of golf?
Yeah, I'm sure. Because when you break down the numbers, and Pinehurst #2 was a great watch, right? A lot of people, me included, love that test of golf, to see these guys truly get into these spots where they have, because we do it all the time on like resort courses. We're behind a tree, or in the rough, or making bad shots and having to save a par putt from 12, 13, 14 feet, whatever it is, 25 feet. That's what these guys are doing. So number one, that's one thing. But you see how theatrical it is, right? When you get down the stretch, for the U.S. Open especially, right? Augusta is really, the tournament starts on the back nine on Sunday. At a U.S. Open, the tournament starts on like the last 4 or 5 holes. Because how much drama have we seen in the last 4 or 5 holes in the U.S. Open, especially here, right, when Payne Stewart won with Phil Mickelson and that head-to-head. So when you see this theater, right, and this is what they've tried to do with signature events, is to make it more, and this is what this week is at Travelers at TPC River Highlands. This is what they're trying to do with this. But when it comes down to it, especially in golf and like in tennis, it's a personality, it's an individual, it's like a Bryson against this. We love to do that head to head, right? Because there's no teams. And so it's Bryson against this, it's Liv against PGA Tour. When this thing all comes together, you're going to see now much more content and much more dynamics come into play, which only means more money for everyone involved, right? Because we're going to be giving that money to them. So it's much closer.
Listen, people are here for it, and people have been, the sport needs it. I don't need to tell you. We've seen erosion of numbers. I suspect that the numbers, I haven't seen TV numbers yet, but I expect that they will be massive from Sunday for the reasons that you just laid out. But at a certain point, we need to get these guys together more than 4 times a year. And it does. There were reports that there's some sort of framework moving forward. I guess I'll just ask you, are you at all optimistic that we might be seeing some sort of merge, however they do it, more than 4 times a year, Dechambeau and Rory being in the same field along with the other stars of both tours?
Yeah, look, like there's been some general, some of these guys might do like the live setup where you got team events or 54, whatever it is, right? Some might be sanctioned live events. Some might be, most would probably be PGA events. I'm sure John Rahm will be very happy to go back to 72 holes. I think he's having which is weird that it feels like he has a little buyer's remorse, but I don't know why, because you got a mid 9-figure payout, right? Like he's taking money and sail off into the sunset. Like, what are you doing, Rahm? But that's what it's going to look like, right? It's going to be basically what we have with multi-layer dynamics to it, and having different events and different style of events. The Zurich Classic is the team event that we have on the PGA Tour. And for better or worse, right, it's just a different feeling. It's just a different way to consume content, which is the name of the game. It's going to mean more money for everybody. And that's why I think it's going to, I know it's going to happen. I just don't know when. But you got to expect, Hustler, there's going to be tons of money that will be infused into this, and guys will be getting paid, especially the stars. And Bryson's at the top of that list, if not number one.
If they want to make the match relevant again, I know a couple guys that might get a few people in front of it. Reid, thanks so much for doing this, buddy. Loving all your work on the telecast this year. Enjoy the Travelers. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, bud. Take care.
All right, great stuff with Reid Fowler. Appreciate him jumping on today, and a special condolences to Reid and anybody out there that had a Rory outright. I feel sick, and I didn't even lose a bet on it. I lost on other guys. Shout out to Patty Gregoire, though. Pat came through again in the lock shop with the outright winner of Bryson. So whoever was riding with Patty, who has been hot in the lock shop this year, well done. And again, I don't even know what to say about Rory losing the way that he did yesterday. It's going to be for a very interesting press conference whenever he ends up meeting the media. And we're not too far away from Troon and the Open Championship, another chance to win a major. But holy smokes, that was something yesterday. And congratulations to Dechambeau, who's making tons of new fans and adding to the trophy case. It is a joke that he's not in the Olympics. I totally get it. Guys left the PGA Tour and went to live. And that was going to be, they were going to miss out on some things. The one thing that I don't think should be done by the official world golf ranking in today's day and age is the Olympic team. And Bryson's clearly number one or number two behind Scotty Scheffler. He should be there. And it is too bad. Speaking of the Olympics, though, congratulations to Corey Connors. Connors, with his top 10 yesterday, I believe he tied for 9th, managed to jump Adam Hadwin and make the Canadian Olympic team. And, of course, congratulations to Winnipeg's Derek Ingram, who was there with him every step of the way, coaching Corey. Had a nice text chat with DI. He's all fired up. So Corey Connors and Nick Taylor, born in Winnipeg, going to the Olympic Games representing Canada. Great stuff. There's our Breezy Bend golf report for the day. If you are thinking about making Breezy a long-term golfing home for you and your family at one of Winnipeg's top private courses, give our pal Corey Johnson a call over at the clubhouse. You can find out more online at breezybend.ca. Also an amazing spot for wedding hostings if you are getting hitched or looking for a beautiful spot for your big day. You can talk to Corey about that as well. All right, let's get over to our Coolbet lines. We do have to get ready for the track tonight. Assiniboia Downs is back. But first order of business, I meant to do this on Friday. Our first two qualifiers for the Huss Bus to Labor Day for Coolbetters. Again, if you missed it, if you're making any wager on CFL games this year at Coolbet, screen cap your wager and send it. We usually say a $10 wager, but if you've got a couple of $5, that's fine as well. Send it in to contest@winnipegsportstalk.com. Every week we'll be picking a qualifier. We sort of had a half week to start it off, so we did 2. We spun the wheel, and congratulations to Mark Mfanasuk. Mark, a big lock shopper, is in there. So, Mark, you're entered, as is Keith Dirksen. So, Keith, congratulations. You're in as well. Both of you guys are getting marbles, and we'll do a special marble race in the second week of August to give the trip away. It includes transport from Winnipeg to Regina, 2 nights hotel, tickets to the Labor Day Classic for 2, and tons of great swag from Coolbet and the folks at the Crew, the 1930 Crew. If you are thinking about getting a couple seats on, I know it's filling up quickly. Go over just anywhere on social media, the 1930 Crew, 1930 in numbers, and get signed up for that and tell them you want to be on the Huss Bus. I'm hosting one of them. Cannot wait for that. So to Coolbet we go. Slow night tonight. No hockey. We got to wait for tomorrow. We do get Game 5 of the NBA Finals. The Celtics are 7-point favorites in tonight's game. kind of think they get it done. I'm leaning on Celtics -7 in this, although I'd love to see the Mavericks get the win. As far as tomorrow's Stanley Cup Finals, Florida -137 favorites to get the job done. Oilers +116. And if you think the Oilers can complete the miracle, they're +700 to run the table, which is about half of what the Mavericks are, which I think speaks to how close some of these games have been. And the fact that, I mean, Edmonton, if they just won that damn first game when they really should have, we're talking about a 2-2 series right now. Still a long ways for them to go. That is up there. The Blue Jays are one game behind out of 500. Kikuchi's on the hill tonight against the Red Sox. Blue Jays -130 favorites. Boston +110. Can the Jays get to 500 after a couple big wins on the weekend against Cleveland? We will see tonight. And of course, Euro continues. I can tell you that as we do this right now, France is up 1-0 just into the second half. Tomorrow's matches start off with Croatia and Albania. Croatia -208 favorite on the three-way. Ronaldo and Portugal taking on Czechia. Portugal's -189. And Turkey is a slight -133 favorite against Georgia. Again, all on the three-way lines. It's all up there at Coolbet right now. If you haven't already played at Coolbet, use the promo code WST when you make your first deposit. Hook you up with a 100% bonus on that deposit, up to $200. And again, when you're betting CFL, any CFL bets, $10 or more, screen cap it, send it to us, contest@winnipegsportstalk.com for a chance to get into the marble race for that trip with us to the Labor Day Classic. All right, Remo, one more order of business, and that is to get to the track tonight. Nice night for some live racing. And they are back now, of course, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday throughout the summer. And I need to come back a little bit. I hit a hiccup. I was 0 for the last couple days, so I need to get back in the winner's circle tonight with our picks.
Yeah, and I had not really won at all, and I need to get on the win column. So I switched up my strategy on Wednesday, and I just went straight winners, 4 straight winners. I didn't lose money. I didn't win a lot, but I was 2 for 4 with my picks, just trying to pick straight winners. So I'm doing that again for $5 winners only. That's the new strategy. I was just losing way too much.
Winners only, huh? All right. Well, what do you got tonight? I am. First 2 races are kind of small, so I'm just starting in race 3.
I'm also starting on race. No, I'm starting a race. I got 4, 5, 6, 7.
Okay. Race 3. I'm just putting, I just love this name. I can't not bet it. And it's been okay so far this year. Just a $2 wager on Woke Joke to win.
It is owned.
Me up.
It is owned by Henry Witt. I know you love the Witt horses, so it doesn't have a Witt name. It's not like Witt's Woke Joke, but it's just Woke Joke.
So yeah, Woke Joke in 3. It's the longest shot. Dixie Moe's in there. JJ's American Diva, and Spun Line is the favorite. So I'm taking the long shot, but just a 4 horse race. All right, let's get to race number 4. What do you got for that one?
I'm going with Big Investment. Going to make a small investment and big investment for tonight's race. 5-2. Second on the program selection, second on the AI smart picks here. I think you can pull out a W over the favorite Yola. So I'm going with Big Investment.
I'm actually taking both of those in an exactor box.
Yeah.
Big Investment and Yola. $4 on the 3-4 exacta box, which brings us to race number 5. And I'm going a little chalky today, but I'm going for the triactors. These are not the smart picks, but they are the program selections. Lady Cop, the favorite. Mechanic Susie, number 2. And I'm going to roll with Texas Rain. I like Texas Rain, who came out at 8-1. So a 1-2-7 triactor box for race number 5 is my next pick.
Yeah, I'm going with Lady Cop to win. That's the program selection, the AI smart picks. It's a heavy favorite at 2-1. Hopefully I can double my money here and keep it going with Lady Cop. The other horses, pretty long shot, so I think Lady Cop's a big favorite. Going with that one.
Yeah, no, right. Moving on to race number 6, I am just going to go $2 win bet on number 6, A Ladies.
Oh, is that
another great name?
I should have done the Lady Exacta box. I could have done Lipstick Lady and A Ladies. But no, I got A Ladies to win as well. Yes.
You could actually do A Ladies with Lipstick Lady and Lady Nyla.
Yeah,
for a triactor box.
Lots
of ladies.
Might
Lots
have
of ladies.
to do that. The ladies' night. If you did a exclusive, the ladies' night box, there it is. HPR. Do they have exclusives on here? Or is that Coolbet only?
My plan is for A Ladies to be going A Ladies to Lipstick Lady and Lady Nyla right behind him as he crosses the finish line. But probably she crosses. Well, he crosses the finish line. I'm not sure.
It does say, one of those A Ladies is a filly and Lipstick Lady and Lady Nyla is a mare. So filly is a male horse, right?
Go figure. No, I think filly is the is the lady.
Mare is a male horse. Yes. I don't know.
Well,
this is what I know about horses.
Gender is a spectrum. Let's not get into that. They're all horses. They're all horses.
It says sex, age, color here, and I should be paying attention to that more. The ages, because like you said, really slow. One of my favorite horses ever is in, but I said used to joke about really slow the name because it was coming to win horses, but now it's not as funny.
Yeah, he not had the.
Yeah.
It's just getting more and more real. The name it is getting actually more slow. Do you have race 6 or no?
Yeah, I do. Wasn't that race 6?
Yeah,
that was I have A Ladies to win.
Oh, you have A Ladies too. Okay, right on.
The same pick. We don't consult before on the picks, so
no, we don't. And then for race number 7, I'm going with the triactor box 1, 4, 6. That's basically, different order, but both program selections and the AI smart picks. Sabatias, Hyper Holiday, and Lola Lee.
Yeah, I went for Sabatias. Is that how you pronounce it? Is it Sabadas or
you can pronounce it that way?
Is it Sabadas? Anyways, took it to win. Heavy favorite here in the what was 9? We had 2 scratches, 7-horse race.
You got it. So there you go. If you are staying at home, you can always watch the races on the YouTube channel, and Kirk and Stretch do a great job at filling you in beforehand. And you can bet from the comfort of your own home at hpibet.com. Big thanks to our friends at Assiniboia Downs, and stay tuned. We're going to be having a big Downs night later on this summer as well. We'll keep you up to date on that.
Here, Isherboy Bruce cleared it up for us. A mare is a female horse over the age of 3, and a filly is a female horse 3 or younger. So they're all ladies.
That makes sense. Okay, that makes sense.
I didn't know that. Anyways, I probably should have if we're going to be doing this.
Hey, just before we go, a question from Retro Winnipeg, just on tomorrow's festivities for our Gold Eyes patio party. I'm going to send out info to everyone. You're just going to send an email to everyone that had seats. If they have you done that already? Or
I haven't done it. I know that you said that I did.
Yeah.
I hadn't done it yet, but maybe by the time the podcast listeners hear this, they will be sent out. But I'm just getting it all together. There's like a couple. I know Al Broderick just bought a ticket. Shout out to Al. So there's
right on, Al.
Very limited number left, but there's a couple.
There's a couple.
Sure. There's a couple.
Bottom line is you'll get the info in the email, but when you get to the ballpark, and again, we would normally send tickets out, but because it's wristbands for the patio party, we just have to give them out. So we'll have a list of everyone that bought seats. We'll have a table set up when you get there in front of Will Call, like just right the stairs up to the park. So you just come by, we'll cross off, give you your wristbands. If for whatever reason you show up late and we're not there anymore, you'll get them just at the will call box. Like not the one that's in where you normally buy tickets, but there's just a will call window right there. And our pal Will Sutton will be there and we'll hook you up. And yeah, it should be fun. Hopefully the weather will be okay. It doesn't look like it's going to be a great day earlier on, but it should get better throughout the evening. I'm crossing my fingers. It's like the Bomber game for the home opener, which was a crappy day during the day, and then it turned out to be gorgeous while we were there. Regardless, we're going to have a good time. We look forward to seeing everybody out there. And as I say, if there's a couple tickets left, try and grab them, link in the description. But you'll get the information. It won't be like normally when we just send tickets out. You'll be picking them up there. We'll have a WST table. You'll see our stand-up Winnipeg Sports Talk sign. We will be there. It should be real interesting, and it should be real easy. And if for whatever reason you're a little late, go to Will Call. Any ones that aren't picked up, we'll have the list there, and people can come up. But looking forward to seeing everybody tomorrow. We'll watch a little hoops tonight, maybe check in on the WWE after the Clash at the Castle, and get ready for Cup Final Game 5 tomorrow, our Gold Eyes night. More on the Bombers' week of practice as they get ready for the British Columbia Lions. And Mike McIntyre is going to join us, and we'll talk more about the new additions to the coaching staff for the Winnipeg Jets. So make sure to join us tomorrow. While you're at it, hit that thumbs up button if you're with us on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Tell a friend about Winnipeg Sports Talk. And hopefully we'll see many of you tomorrow at our Winnipeg Sports Talk patio party with the Winnipeg Gold Eyes. For Michael Remis, I'm Andrew Paterson. Thanks to Reid Fowler, Joey Slattery, Jeff Hamilton, and Rennie on the road, Sean Reynolds. We'll see you tomorrow on WST. Have a great night.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.